The dilemma for Hezbollah and the people of Lebanon. Many here are tired of conflict, but there are plenty too, like
hello,
Adam,
hello.
who still really believe in Hezbollah.
Where's the team?
Its purpose.
The BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and
Well, good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio on Location. Our community studio today is the Salisbury House on Regent Avenue West. And this is because it's the first of a number of different places we're going to get you out to around town. We're hearing from voters. This is Elmwood-Transcona, and we're going to hear what voters here have to say about the upcoming election, what their needs are, and we're going to hear from the candidates running in this riding who've agreed to sit down with us live here at the Sals today. So we're grateful for their time. It's democracy in action. Thank you for joining us on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app, and on YouTube this morning. If you're watching the show, you can watch it live there. You can come down and ask a question as well. So maybe make us part of your morning or call the listener line. We'll give you more details on that in a moment. Winnipeg, today we are looking like we're going to be right around, probably right around 1 degree. No, I've got that wrong. I'm going to let the forecast get updated in a moment, so we'll stay tuned for that. Right now I can tell you it's 0, though, in the city. Chloe Friesen's on site with me. Marshall Hodgins and Kevin Nipatebo and Corey Funk are back in our studio at 541 Portage Ave. Donna Carrero has produced the program this morning, and big thanks to our news department as well. Let's go there now. Heather Wells has our headlines.
Good morning. Well, the head of the group representing Manitoba's bioscience industry calls it a short-term sigh of relief. That is how Andrea Ledesor feels about U.S. tariffs announced yesterday, which leave Canada relatively unscathed. And while not on the long list of countries Donald Trump hit with blanket tariffs, Ledesor says the impact on those economies will also inevitably be felt in Canada because our supply chain is so interconnected. More on that coming up. Brandon University is seeing international student applications plunge. President David Doherty says it's been slammed by federal policies. We'll hear how in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heather. Do you know the daytime high today?
It is 3 degrees.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I just misplaced a paper. All right, it's 1 minute to 6 o'clock. Why are we in Elmwood-Transcona? Well, because we're watching this riding. It was redrawn. It's taken in a larger part of a Dougal now, and it lost part of North Kildonan. So what does this mean? Well, it means that the Conservatives have a chance at maybe picking up this riding. It's been NDP for a long time. It did go Conservative in 2011, so we'll see what happens today. In the first hour of the show, stay tuned.
Today on Q.
I'm Garby Bailey in for Tom Power. The acclaimed composer, lyricist, and playwright Britta Johnson always knew that theater would be a big part of her life. She'll tell you about bringing home her big breakthrough musical, Life After.
Creating a musical score to support that was
Hey, how do we sound, folks?
satisfying.
Q. This morning.
Hey, how does it sound? Anything I need to change?
And on the CBC Listen app or wherever you get your podcast.
Awesome. Okay.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Canada and much of the world is feeling the brunt of new U.S. tariffs. Auto sector tariffs came into effect at head of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. He says these new tariffs, combined with the existing steel and aluminum tariffs, will be devastating.
But at some point, on a publicly traded company, if you're booking losses that are in the millions at every assembly plant, And that's what we're talking about, $3, $4, $5, $8 million a day per production plant. You have a fiduciary obligation to your shareholders not to burn their money.
U.S. President Donald Trump has also unveiled a long list of countries with new tariffs. Canada is not on it for now, but the post-war trading system has effectively been blown up. These new tariffs are sending shockwaves through economic hubs in Europe.
I think they're an idiot, alienating themselves from the global market.
It's going to create enormous potential recessions in so many countries, so many economies. I think so many million people are going to be affected.
The world's changed now. I think it's going to cause a lot of issues for a lot of people.
We have more coming on the international reaction, but first, Rafi Boudjikanian tells us how Ottawa is responding.
We talked about protecting Canadian industry and Canadian workers, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Industry Minister Anita Anand on the heels of a cabinet meeting to discuss U.S. President Donald Trump's latest round of tariffs. Mark Carney, back in Prime Minister mode, tried to say things could be worse.
He has preserved a number of important elements of our relationship, the commercial relationship between Canada and the United States.
But he still recognized the latest round of tariffs will hurt.
The fentanyl tariffs still remain in place, as do the tariffs for steel and aluminum.
Tariffs and the threat of more have defined large parts of this election. Carney will talk about countermeasures later today. He'll also be meeting with his provincial and territorial counterparts, discussing their next steps. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre calls Trump's latest round of tariffs an unjustified attack on Canada's economy. Tom Perry has more on what Poilievre told supporters at a rally in Kingston, Ontario last night.
Kingston, who's ready for a change?
Another big crowd for Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader speaking to roughly 4,000 cheering supporters in Kingston, addressing right off the top the latest moves by Donald Trump.
Canada must end its era of overdependence and weakness. We must be an economic fortress that can defend itself, that can stand up for its own people and put Canada first.
Canada fared better than others in this latest round of U.S. tariffs, but Conservative supporters like Deepak Matar acknowledge Trump has shaken up this election.
It's changed the landscape. It's changed how people are thinking in Canada.
Polls have shown the Liberals in the lead and suggest voters see their leader, Mark Carney, as the best bet to tame Trump. But as he looks around at a packed room of Poilievre supporters, John Lecomte shakes his head.
That's mainstream media. I'm not believing it.
Poilievre has spent more time in this campaign talking about building pipelines and cutting taxes than he has about tariffs, something a lot of his supporters want to hear. The Conservative leader is sticking to that core message, hoping more voters will see it as the best way to defend Canada against the U.S. and its president. Tom Perry, CBC News, Kingston.
Financial markets are responding negatively to Donald Trump's tariffs. Traders are jittery about the global economic impact of U.S. trade policy. Shares in Asia fell in early trading but recovered slightly before closing. Trading on European markets is seeing similar slides. Paris, London, and Berlin have all dropped sharply at open. Even though Donald Trump did not announce any additional tariffs on Canada, the pressure from the existing ones is high. Even without a new front on a trade war, many in the business sector hope Canada's trade relationship with the U.S. can be restored. Anis Hadari explains.
I'm saddened to see that our 120-year partner and closest ally and biggest trading partner, we've got to the point where we're willing to put tariffs and counter tariffs on each other.
For Paul Colborne, the impact of tariffs on the oil and gas sector isn't just a money thing. He heads up Surge Energy in Calgary. And while his company isn't dealing with new U.S. tariffs this time around, he wants to see Canada avoid them entirely by negotiating.
They need our crude, they need our electricity in the east. If you understand the other guy's needs and you can get as close as you can to there, hopefully you can bridge a deal.
Existing tariffs are still in place. Think steel, aluminum, or automotive. But for now, Canada has avoided the heavy tariffs on Asia and Europe.
Estimates are it's going to cost U.S. households $5,000 more a year
given the levels we're seeing on goods from Japan and China, Taiwan, other markets.
Adam Legg is president of the Business Council of Alberta. He says one thing Canada should do is let things settle in the United States first.
Let the torment and the tornado dwell and develop in the U.S., and let them be their own advocates for change.
But while Canada may have dodged an immediate economic catastrophe, there's still damage from the existing measures. Auto manufacturer Stellantis is halting production in Windsor for 2 weeks, with the blame, at least in part, placed on U.S. tariffs. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Calgary.
Trump's overhaul of global trade policy is drawing a sharp reaction from China. It was the country hardest hit by the tariffs announced yesterday, and today Beijing is calling the U.S. president a bully. This is stoking fears of an escalating trade war between the world's two biggest economies. Yenna Lee reports.
Strong words by China at a foreign ministry press briefing in Beijing today in response to President Trump's sweeping tariffs. Spokesperson Guo Jiakun says China opposes the move and will take firm measures to safeguard its legitimate rights. China's Commerce Ministry has already pledged to deepen trade talks with the EU, Japan and South Korea to counter Washington's moves. The additional 34% tariffs imposed by the US on Chinese exports brings total tariffs on Chinese goods to 54%. China has been the main target of Trump's trade actions. Cambodia was slapped with a 49% levy, Vietnam with 46%. Trump says both countries are being used by China to ship goods to the US. His administration also closed a loophole known as de minimis that has allowed China's e-commerce giants to reap huge profits from the US market. The move was on hold previously because of logistical problems related to goods inspections. The developments are deepening differences between Washington and Beijing. There's growing frustration in China over what many see as an effort to undermine the country's pandemic recovery as it faces major economic challenges. Yenna Lee for CBC News, Beijing.
The U.S.'s European allies are condemning Donald Trump's tariff plan. The president of the European Commission says Europe has been let down by its oldest ally. Ursula von der Leyen also says Trump has dealt the global economy a heavy blow, and she vows the EU will fight back. Crystal Gomansing reports.
We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us.
Strength in numbers. That's the pitch from Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president. She says every citizen around the globe could see the cost of food, transportation, and medicine increase. However, the 27 bloc of nations acting as a single market is powerful, even in the face of sweeping tariffs.
We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel. And we're now preparing for further countermeasures.
With tens of billions of dollars in counter tariffs in the works, European leaders hope to negotiate their way out of the economic storm, as does the UK.
Last night, the President of the United States acted for his country. Today, I will act in Britain's interest.
Meeting with about a dozen major business leaders in London, Keir Starmer vowed to protect the UK's economy. The Prime Minister consistently calls the current trading situation with the US fair and balanced. The UK was hit with a lower levy of 10%. Starmer is trying to soothe fears and keep markets from overreacting, saying the UK will respond with cool and calm heads. A move that could also help avoid drawing the U.S. president's attention. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
The most read story at cbcnews.ca is from our Windsor Bureau. Look for the headline, Dumbfounded and Disgusted, Canada's car capital grapples with Trump tariffs. There's confusion, says the union that is representing the workers at a key Ford engine plant. That story, cbcnews.ca. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Welcome to Thursday morning on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Information Radio, your morning show live on location in Elmwood-Transcona. So our studio today is the Salisbury House. It's at 1570 Regent Avenue West, and we're here for good reason. This is in the heart of this riding, Elmwood-Transcona, and in a few weeks, voters here are going to decide who they want to represent them in Ottawa. This covers a lot of territory. It was redrawn, so think about all kinds of different neighborhoods. Think about Dougal, the community of Dougal. Think about North Kildonan and East Elmwood, all the way through the Transcona yards. We're going to hear from voters this hour who live here about what they need. So we're going to hear from someone who says they are strategically voting, even though they say they, quote, hate to do it. So what does that mean? How are they changing their vote? And we also have the candidates with us today. 3 or 4 of them have agreed to be here live. First up this half hour, we'll hear live from Colin Watson from the People's Party of Canada. So we'll learn more about him, why he wants to run and represent this part of Elmwood-Transcona, this part of the city, in the upcoming federal election. And then we'll tell you a bit more about the broadcast for the rest of the morning in a moment. Right now, though, let's go to Heather Wells. We have to plug into news of the day, and it is 6:11. Heather, what's developing?
Well, good morning, Marcy. Yeah, Canada was left off that list of more than 180 countries hit by Donald Trump's tariffs yesterday. But this country's sigh of relief may be short-lived. The president and CEO of the Bioscience Association of Manitoba says reverberations are bound to be felt in this country as dozens of our trading partners have been hit with what the president is calling reciprocal tariffs. Manitoba's NDP government is backing off an environmental commitment it made shortly after taking office. Premier Rob Canoe admits Manitoba Hydro may not be fully green by 2035. We'll hear why coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's go to Corey Funk now. He is in covering weather and traffic. And where do you want to start, Cor?
Yeah, let's start with the weather here in Winnipeg. At the Forks right now, we are sitting at 1. It is going to warm up to 3 degrees today. 30% chance of flurries or rain showers. Might get a little bit slippery too. There's a risk of freezing and drizzle this morning as well. Wind northwest 20. Gusting to, actually going to stay around 20 this morning. As for your commute, looking pretty good here in the city. I will say around Grand Rapids, highways are looking are covered and some poor visibility there as well. So look out there if you are on Highway 6 this morning, heading between Winnipeg and Thompson. If you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
And so Information Radio is going to be live in a number of different ridings leading up to the election and Election Day on April 28th. So Elmwood-Transcona, since 1988, voters here have gone NDP every single time except 2011. It was back to the NDP. It was back to, it went to in 2011 to the Conservative candidate, Lawrence Towett at that point. But today it's a whole different world out there, of course, quite literally. We've just been hearing about the tariffs and Trump and Canadian sovereignty, but also here locally, with affordability. And people are struggling with a lot of different things in the bottom line. So today we will meet candidates who think they're right for the job. Incumbent Leila Dance is running for the NDP. We'll have her on in the second hour. Ian McIntyre will be here after 8. He's running for the Liberals. We also want to mention Conservative candidate Colin Reynolds did not respond to multiple invitations to come on the show. But we will hear from Colin Watson, who's the candidate for the People's Party of Canada, in just a moment because he is here live at the Sals. First, though, let's hear from a voter. In addition to the voters that we're going to hear from today, I spent a couple hours in the riding this week talking to folks outside different grocery stores all over this riding as they were packing their carts. So Ted Choutois has lived in Transcona for nearly 36 years. He says PPC and Conservative candidates have both been at his door trying to win his vote. But as you'll hear, he's not sure who's going to get it because he's lost trust that any politicians will follow through with the promises they make. Do you vote in the federal election?
I try to vote every year, yes.
Okay. Why do you vote every year? Like, what, obviously still believe in the process somewhat.
If you don't vote, you haven't got a say. Don't complain about what comes in. That's the way I look at it. So I vote to make sure mine does.
Yeah. Oh, so I'll let you pick up some grocery there that fell. So what are you thinking about this year as you're considering your vote?
Well, I don't know if I'm, it's a hard decision this year because they're like a bunch of babies right now, calling each other names back and forth. It's ridiculous. It's like being in kindergarten with those guys. I mean, get on with the issues. Never mind this one said this one said this. It's stupid already. They're adults.
And what are the issues out here in Transcona you wish they'd be talking about?
Well,
like in your life.
In here at Transcona, for federal, we actually need them to put some money in for the sewer treatment plant. That's a big hit for Winnipeggers to put. You know, taxes are going up. We got big jump in taxes this year. That's, you know, somebody's got to help pay for this stuff. We can't just be the little guy who works or old age pensioner who worked all their lives, and, you know, their taxes are going where?
So you're looking for them to support some of the projects. Yeah. What other issues are on your mind that are concerning you?
A little more for our seniors. It's nice, sure, we work. A lot of the seniors I know don't have big pension plans. They're living on an old age pension and nothing else. You can't afford this stuff. Some of them got homes, so some of them, I know a couple have got to get rid of their homes because they can't afford it. So where do you go?
So affordability. Yep. Now, it sounds like you don't like the attitude of the leaders in question. Have you leaned yet into the parties or any of them speaking to you in terms of the promises that they're making on the campaign trail, or do you trust one over the other maybe, or where are you at?
I don't really trust one over the other because it seems to me they say a lot of stuff. Yeah, you don't see half the stuff they say. If they're going to promise stuff, let's get it over with and do it. Don't promise something and then go back.
So in the past, how have you voted? Who's got your vote?
Usually NDP. Yeah. Transcona's a big NDP people. So.
Are you leaning toward them this time, or could your vote be actually up for grabs potentially?
It could be up for grabs this year. A little ticked off with NDP backing Trudeau on a lot of his stuff. You know, they didn't need to do that. Let the chips fall where they fall. Let's get it over with. I think the new Liberal leader, I think he's got something there. So we'll see.
What makes you say that about Mark Carney?
I don't know. I think he's got more of a background on finances and that, which is a big issue. He knows, you know, about that stuff. So.
Just last, we're having the candidates on. Actually, we're going to be over at the Salzon region on Thursday. Do you have any questions directly for any of the parties or candidates, or maybe for any of the politicians overall that you want to pose to them?
No, not really, because you give a question and they give you an answer. We're going to do this, and I've never ever seen that materialize.
They need to earn your trust. It sounds like
they need. I think they need to earn a lot of people's trust.
That's Ted Schuttwa. He's one of the voters here in Elmwood-Transcona, and that is why we are here. It is Thursday morning. That was me talking to Ted earlier this week, and we are at the Sal's at 1570 Regent Avenue West. You can come down this morning. You might get a chance to ask a question, or you might get a chance to meet one of the candidates running here. Stay with us. This is CBC.
Scott Payne spent nearly 2 decades working undercover as a biker, a neo-Nazi, a drug dealer, and a killer. But his last big mission at the FBI was the wildest of all.
I have never burned Bibles, burned an American flag, and I damn sure was never with a group of people that stole a goat, sacrificed it at a pagan ritual, and drank its blood. And I did all that in about 3 days with these guys.
Agent Palehorse, the second season of White Hot Hate. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
6:19 a.m. is the time right now. Well, Colin Watson is new to federal politics, but the former crewman for the Canadian military decided to run for office, in part, he says, because he wanted to advocate for better supports for veterans. He thinks the People's Party of Canada is the political party that's going to help do that. Colin Watson's a candidate for the PPC here in Elmwood-Transcona, and he's the early bird joining us now. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So let's first learn about yourself. What should voters know about you?
So far, I typically like to convey to my voters that I've spent time in the forces, and I've gotten wounded. I've been injured through a training accident, and that's I'm only 22 years old, so I don't have a lot of life experience. So typically, when I go to voters, I'm all ears. I like to listen to what they have to say. So.
How did getting injured that young, and you actually landed in a wheelchair to rehab and everything?
Right, yep.
How'd that change your perspective on sort of what's needed out there as a citizen?
Especially with the healthcare system, I realized a lot of the shortcomings of the healthcare. especially with a lot of the veteran benefits that weren't being provided. A lot of it was inaccessible. So it opened my eyes a lot of what needs to change, and the thing is, these aren't things that are these are things that are impacting other people, but these are things that are also directly impacting me, and that I believe should be improved or approached differently.
So walk me through that. The military funding and veteran services, I know they're key issues, as you said. So things need to change. So what would the People's Party of Canada do differently to change them?
Well, obviously, we would start with, there's a lot of complaints coming from various members in the forces and members who also released from the forces that we do need more funding. And I can say from my time in the forces that it's a big topic. I'll even tell a brief story of my sister who's actively in the forces. One of the vehicles broke down during her training. Right, that's unacceptable. Right, we shouldn't have equipment that is breaking down, and even if it's on a training environment, if we were to go into a conflict, who's to say that we're going to trust the equipment that we're being given by the federal government?
I'm asking, you said obviously both the Liberals and the NDP coalition were fiscally irresponsible. I shouldn't say obviously, but you've said they were.
Right.
What would the PPC do about that? Like, where would you actually cut spending so you could, have more spending for the military and other issues that you think are top of mind?
Right. So my first go-to for spending is typically foreign aid. So I would want to, me personally, and as well with the party, we would cut foreign aid to foreign countries. A lot of these nations are, in many cases, hostile to us. So there's no reason why we would be giving them freebies.
Do you have an example of a nation where you would identify as one that you feel funding could be cut?
I would definitely say with Israel is a good start. Israel, and with the whole conflict going on there, we could definitely cut money. And we could take that money, reinvest it in Canadians, reinvest it in our armed forces, and that applies to really all nations that we fund.
I know that you've said that in terms of finding money, that taxing the rich is not the answer. Why not?
So my approach to that is typically, when you tax the rich, they're not going to be the ones footing the bill. They're going to up the prices of everything else. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the regular people like myself and yourself as well, we're the ones who have to foot the bill. So by doing that, it's counterproductive to what the goals really are. I'm not saying necessarily that we need to cut the taxes for the rich. We want to make Canada a friendly place for business, whether it be big or small. So it creates jobs and wealth for our citizens.
You heard me out talking to voters in Elmwood-Transcona. I know you've
Correct.
been door knocking. What have you been hearing at the doors?
So the big number one concern is the United States concern, and a lot of the constituents that I've spoken to have been saying that they're really concerned with the threats that Trump is making with the tariffs. Some of them are even concerned with military action from the U.S., and I can understand that since our military is very underfunded. And additionally, they give me a lot of concerns about affordability as well.
I want to ask you specifically something, because I met a voter who actually voted for your party last time, PPC, and he now is going to vote Conservative. And part of that, he said, was because he felt like he liked the strong stances in the PPC party on certain things, but he was worried about some of the extremist views that he felt played into the party, on questioning whether science is real, white supremacy. He brought up these issues and said that he feels like it was the party was a bit too extreme for him, so his vote's going to go Conservative. What do you say to that, people that associate those views with the PPC?
Well, we're definitely not a white supremacist party. I can tell you that right now. I had the pleasure of having two foreign volunteers who were recent new Canadian citizens come and help me with canvassing. Absolute pleasure to meet them. And what was the second question? Sorry.
Is that a perception then that people get wrong about your party? That do you balk when you hear that people think it's extreme?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I definitely don't have those extreme views. I don't agree with it. I think it's very counterproductive to what our Canadian values are, right? We have set of Canadian values, and those don't align with the Canadian values. And I can say for certain that the People's Party does align with our basic Canadian values.
You heard this last voter say he doesn't trust you or anybody else. He doesn't trust any of the politicians to follow through on their promises. What would you like to say as a final thought to voters who are listening today that want to trust about why you would follow through with the promises you make?
Well, I'll start with saying I don't blame them for having lack of trust, right? So for the longest time, we've had politicians in Parliament who haven't been fulfilling promises that they campaign on. So I really don't blame them. And I think a way of building trust is we need to have accountability. First and foremost, accountability. We need to have accountability within Parliament and within political candidates. And we need to show the people what we actually do. And that includes transparency. So people can feel that they can trust us a lot more. And I think that's a good place to start.
Thank you very much for being here. Are you open if we get more questions through the morning? Because this is often what happens at these events, to answering some of them, or we can maybe forward them to your office. And
absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Super. Thank you so much for being here. Nice to meet you. Good luck on the 28th.
Thank you so much.
That's Colin Watson. He's a PPC candidate for Elmwood-Transcona. Later in the show, we will be meeting the Liberal candidate, Ian McIntyre, and the NDP candidate, Leila Dance. Conservative candidate Colin Reynolds did not respond to multiple invitations to join us this morning. Well, 6:26 a.m. and the candidate just brought this up at the door. A lot of people worried about the United States. So let's take you there now. It's being called this morning the best of a bad deal. That's what Mark Carney has said that Canadians should expect in U.S. President Donald Trump's global trade war. And it turns out that he might have been right. Trump has apparently exempt Canada and Mexico from tariffs as members of Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement for the time being. This is, of course, happening during our federal election campaign. So we're going to look briefly at the reaction from the federal leaders this morning. David Tabachnik is with us, professor of political science at Nipissing University. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So I just want to go straight to what stood out for you about what Carney said. We've just heard it on World Report about how he communicated the message after we saw Donald Trump out with that huge list of nations and tariffs.
Well, I think he saw this coming to some degree. As you said, we got the best of a bad deal. But he wasn't in a celebratory mood. He wasn't gloating. He basically said that the tariffs that have already been announced upon Canada, including on aluminum and steel, the auto tariffs are just coming in today. These represent major problems for Canada, and it will have a very negative effect. He did also mention that potentially new tariffs on things like pharmaceuticals and lumber will be coming, which will be further problems for our economy and jobs. He vaguely talked about countermeasures. We don't know quite what those are right now. I believe he's meeting with the premiers today, and he met with his cabinet yesterday, so I'll expect some sort of announcement later today.
What did Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre say about Trump's quote-unquote Liberation Day?
Well, he's had a couple of rallies over the last couple of days. I think he had a large, boisterous rally in Kingston, Ontario yesterday. He did talk a little bit about Trump in that rally, basically saying this is a betrayal. But he's been under some pressure, of course, to sort of pivot his campaign, to sort of focus his sights right on Trump. I think he's been a little slow to do that because some of his conservative supporters are more sort of Trump-oriented, right? So he doesn't want to alienate them necessarily. So he's focusing on questions of affordability and housing, which, of course, is a broad concern amongst Canadians. I think the one thing he said that is an attempt to differentiate his party from the Liberals is that he would open up Canada to more oil and gas exploration and projects and pipelines. Of course, this is sort of building upon his antagonism to the carbon tax. And so that might be a fault line between the Liberals and Conservatives on this issue.
How historic is this moment in terms of Canada-U.S. trade relations? Because despite sort of living in a bit of a moment of a slight bit of relief today and trying to, manage this, you've highlighted, the auto sector, the other steel, like the sectors that are still going to be affected. But also moving forward, I mean, we're in a different place now. This is not like we got over something. So how historic is this?
Well, Trump himself actually made a historical reference to the 1880s of all things, where he apparently called this a golden age, where the United States put massive tariffs on its importers, including Canada. Of course, it doesn't take long for us to look at the history books and realize that ultimately exacerbated and led to the Great Depression and ultimately World War II. So most economists say these tariffs from 100 years ago were a disaster. A more recent example would be the early 1970s with the Nixon administration. They put up a 10% surcharge, which is similar to a tariff on all imports. And Pierre Trudeau actually went down to Washington, D.C. asking for an exemption. He didn't receive it. And then when he got back to Canada, he essentially said, we need a different option for the Canadian economy. We have to diversify. We have to stop relying so much on the United States. But it really wasn't successful. We're still in the orbit of the American economy. Will it be different this time? We'll have to wait and see.
All right, David, thank you very much for the analysis.
My pleasure.
David Tabachnik, Professor of Political Science at Nipissing University. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is 1 degree. Still mostly cloudy, still a slight chance of flurries this morning, and that could turn into rain showers this afternoon. A little on the cool side, a high today of 3. The day after U.S. President Donald Trump rolled out his global tariff initiative, Mark Carney is in Ottawa formulating Canada's response. The Liberal leader has stepped away from his campaign schedule, and as Prime Minister, he promises Canada will strike back.
We are going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures. We are going to protect our workers, and we are going to build the strongest economy in the G7. In a crisis, it's important to come together, and it's essential to act with purpose and with force, and that's what we will do.
Carney met last night with his cabinet, and today he has talks scheduled with the premiers. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre holds a news conference this morning in Kingston and attends a rally in Oshawa tonight. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh will make an announcement in Ottawa before making his way to Montreal. Now, Canada's sigh of relief at being left off Donald Trump's tariff hit list may be short-lived. The president and CEO of the Bioscience Association of Manitoba says the reverberations are bound to be felt in this country, as dozens of our trading partners have been hit. Andrea Ladouceur fears there will be a humanitarian impact as well.
Countries on that list are very underdeveloped countries, and having this as another burden for them to carry is going to have very strong impacts on individuals in those countries, and that's hard to take.
Other Manitoba business leaders tell CBC Canada must continue to look for markets just in case Trump changes his mind. Now, Canadian building materials escaped the new tariffs from Donald Trump. Liz Kovach at Supply Build Canada is shocked her industry is immune for now. Kovach says it doesn't mean it's the end of threats.
It's hard to say because we've not been in this position before. So definitely the uncertainty has been really stressful for the retail sector. And I'm sure there's going to be a sense of relief knowing that, okay, right now we're business as usual. We need to keep this in the back of our mind.
Kovach says some stores may stock up on supplies because of the unpredictability of the U.S. president. Overseas financial markets are responding negatively to the Trump tariffs. Traders are obviously nervous about the global economic impact. Shares in Asia fell sharply in early trading before recovering slightly at the end of the trading day there. But the U.S. dollar and U.S. stock futures are hardest hit, and European markets are seeing similar slides. Paris, London, and Berlin all opened deep in the red. More national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Manitoba's premier is backing away from an environmental goal he set shortly after taking office. Premier Wab Kinew wanted Manitoba Hydro to go fully green by 2035. That meant weaning the Crown utility off its last fossil fuel burning electricity plant. That was in 2023. But Kinew says the trade squabble with the U.S. is altering his view.
We have to look at the American situation and things that we might have thought of in the past a certain way, the balance between renewables and carbon-based fuel. I think given what we're seeing with Trump, we have to be able to put the future power needs of our province as the first priority and make sure that we have everything that we need by way of electricity to build Manitoba up for the future.
The Crown Corporation proposed a new fuel burning station in February. Kinew says its two 250-megawatt turbines would likely have to use natural gas, although he is still holding up hope for hydrogen or some other, quote, miracle fuel. Brandon University is seeing international student applications plunge. President David Docherty says it's been slammed by federal policies. International student permit numbers for the entire country have been slashed by Ottawa. The cutbacks are being felt at BU, where there are 1,600 fewer applications in 2024 compared to the previous year.
We know that that the word is out in the international community for students who are thinking to say that Canada is no longer as welcoming as it once was, and that's why we're seeing the dramatic decrease in the number of applications.
Doherty wants to see Manitoba universities given most favored institution status. That means they would be eligible to allow more international students. You can find more news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, I'm back in my stomping grounds.
Yes.
Yeah, right across from Kildonan Place. We're at Regent Avenue West here at the Sal's. I grew up in North Kildonan. People might know that about me. So, I mean, I'm going to be old now. Back in the day, when we got a theater at Kildonan Place, it was very exciting. Now they actually have a new theater. Yeah, remember?
Mm-hmm. I grew up in the area, too. Yeah, I remember going, as a 14-year-old going to KP. It was like a big deal to be able to on my own with my friends.
And I know everything about bus transfers. Every time we do a transit story, in case you're all wondering, everybody, I get it. I did that multiple transfer situation from North Kildonan through to get to University of Manitoba and Red River, where I went to school. I think it was 3 buses at one point. It's nice to be back out here in Elmwood-Transcona. I got to say, I spent 2 hours talking to voters here earlier in the week as we were preparing for today, and really active people thinking about this election this time around. I don't know if we're going to find that in every riding, but certainly here, people were not shy to be sharing their views. I met people voting all different ways. And as we're going to hear this half hour, Corey, some people also thinking strategically about voting. So, lots coming up on our special broadcast here as we lead up to Election Day. We have more candidates that are going to join us. Just before I'm quiet and I let you get into traffic and weather here, I just want to mention that if you want to leave a listener line, if you're listening this morning, folks, and you can't make it down here to either listen to the show or maybe ask a candidate a question in the next hour, you can always leave one on the listener line as well, and we might be able to get it in. 788-3205. And then Corey will listen and cut it in. See, I'm making work for you, Corey.
Oh, perfect. Love that.
All right, let's get into the regional forecast now.
Yes, so right now in Winnipeg at the Forks, we are already above 0. We're sitting at 1. We are going to be heading up to a high today of 30% chance of flurries or rain showers. So kind of bring that maybe rain jacket over your sweater today is probably the advice. Looking outside of Winnipeg, Brandon, right now you're sitting at -1, heading for a high of 0. 30% chance of flurries for you today as well. Dauphin, -1, heading for a high of 2, also about a 30% chance of flurries. Up in Thompson, -11 right now, heading for a high of 0, 60% chance of flurries as well. So some kind of flurries kind of making its way kind of through the province today. As for your commute right now, I can tell you, Mars, I biked in this morning, and I can only explain it as a little bit icy, a little bit dicey. So heads up on those roads. Might be a little slippery this morning, especially if you are out on the highways. I'm looking around Grand Rapids right now on Highway 6. Manitoba 511 says that it's poor visibility and also covered conditions. So if you're kind of driving in that area right through the Interlake there on Highway 6, less than ideal conditions. So be safe out there. Other than that, highways looking all right. If you hear anything else going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Also, you can call our listen line. I would love to try to get your questions on air for the candidates. The commuter line, though, number to call, 204-788-3093.
Icy dicey. Corey Funk. He loves a rhyme.
I love a good rhyme.
I know you do. You're good at it. All right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
It is time now for business news. As always, at 6:38 a.m., we connect at this point in the show with Crystalie Ramlakan, who's with us now. Hi there.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So U.S. President Donald Trump's announced these retaliatory tariffs on dozens of countries. I think the list was more than 60. Can you quickly recap how Canada has fared? We're not on the initial list, but also obviously there's still issues here, and how markets are reacting today?
Yeah, so you're right. Canada escaped the reciprocal tariffs for now, but some duties remain in place, including on aluminum and steel and on goods that do not comply with the CUSMA trade deal. So that's the Canada-US-Mexico agreement. And a 25% tariff on automobiles came into effect at midnight. So U.S. and Canadian stock indexes finished higher after a choppy trading session yesterday. They fell earlier in the day, but then rebounded as investors made some last-minute bets to position themselves ahead of Trump's announcement. But then Trump began speaking after Wall Street closed, and stocks fell sharply in post-market trading. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ futures reversed gains as investors got nervous about the sweeping tariff plans. So all of this suggests investors expect deep losses when Wall Street opens today. And the Canadian dollar also swung wildly up and down during Trump's presentation, but was higher as reports emerged that Canada would not face additional tariffs for the time being.
This weekend, to another story, is the deadline for TikTok to find a buyer in the United States. I forgot all about the TikTok story after much coverage. How's this looking?
Yeah, well, bidders are piling up. So Amazon, and then separately a consortium led by the founder of OnlyFans, which includes a cryptocurrency foundation, are the latest to throw their hats in the ring. So TikTok faces an April 5th deadline to reach a deal to find a non-Chinese buyer under threat of being banned from the United States. So U.S. officials have raised security concerns over the app's ties to China. TikTok and its owner ByteDance have denied this. But yeah, Amazon has had ambitions for a long time to have an in-house social media network that could, help it sell more goods and appeal to a younger audience. So it bought live video site Twitch in 2014 for nearly $1 billion and book review site Goodreads in 2013 as part of its efforts to build a viable social network. And it also developed and tested a TikTok-like short-form video and photo feed called Inspire that it closed earlier this year, though. Now, the future of the app has, used by nearly half of all Americans, has been up in the air since a law passed last year, requiring ByteDance to divest TikTok. And then on Trump's first day back in office, he signed an executive order postponing the ban for 75 days. So Washington officials have said TikTok's ownership by ByteDance makes it beholden to the Chinese government, and they have speculated that Beijing could use the app to conduct influence operations and to collect data on Americans.
What are the numbers looking like today? I know you've given some of them, but what else about the markets?
Yeah, so in Europe, markets are retreating. Germany is down, the UK is down, France is down. In Asia, markets are sliding. So Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all down. Oil is down $3.69 to $68.02 US per barrel. Gold is down $46.10 to $3,087.60 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.42 of a cent to 70.6 cents US.
All right, Crystalie, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Crystalie Ramlakam with Business News. It is 6:43 a.m. in Winnipeg right now. 1 degree. Brandon's -1. Thompson, the cold spot at -14 currently. We're broadcasting live from Elmwood-Transcona this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa on site with Chloe Friesen and Donna Carrero as we're looking outside the windows of the Salisbury House at 1570 Regent Avenue West. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty promising day in Winnipeg, but the sky might be betraying us because we are expecting some flurries and maybe even freezing drizzle this morning as well. So there's certainly some icy patches out there. So take it easy, as Corey mentioned. If you have a problem on your commute, 788-3093. Well, this is an interesting and active and very big riding, as they all are. Now, just keep in mind in Manitoba here, there are 14 seats. 14 people representing our entire province. And so this riding includes a whole bunch of neighborhoods here, the Elmwood-Transcona riding, and it is now even bigger because after 2022, some of the residential streets in NK were removed from the boundary line. So it expands all the way across the Red River floodway, goes into the arm of Springfield, into the community of Dugald. This riding has gone NDP every single time since 1988, except for 2011 when it went for the Conservatives. Next on the show, let's hear from some more voters here as our live show continues.
All right.
Mona and Ernie Sedleski.
So we're watching to see how North American markets will react to the Trump tariffs. Markets around the world have already delivered their verdict.
As you will hear Mona say, she, quote, hates to do it. I met the couple outside a superstore on Regent on a windy, chilly morning earlier this week. The voting is coming up, obviously. What are you thinking? What are the issues for you as, Winnipeggers who live in this part of the city?
For someone who's been waiting for neck surgery from post-op papers in December, it could be still a year. Health issues. Health care is our top priority. Because of our age, maybe. And he was in the hospital there, sat 13 hours in a chair about 3 weeks ago. It's inhumane.
Now, most people, obviously, jurisdictional issues don't play into the average person because it's all somebody's got to take care of me, please. But I'm wondering, obviously, that's a provincial jurisdiction for a lot of the health care, but how would you like to see the feds get involved in fixing it across the country?
Well, I don't know how they'd fix it. I really don't.
Probably have to give more funding to the provinces.
Funding, I guess, yeah.
Funding to the provinces. Obviously our sovereign, like all this that's going on in the States is uppermost in our mind. We've never in all our 80-some years seen anything like it. So we are looking. I've heard it said before that it's hard. We do in Transcona vote NDP, but we definitely want Liberal for the federal. So it's a hard issue. If we vote for our Liberal in Transcona, it'll probably be a wasted vote because it's between the Conservatives and the NDP.
Okay, so you're in a position this year where the reason you're saying we in Transcona, when you look at the voting history here, you're quite right. This is held by the NDP. It was won in a by-election last year. Conservatives have taken this seat. Your riding's been redrawn to include Dugald, which actually polls more for Conservatives if you look in the past. So you could be tight out here. So it sounds like you're well aware of this. Are you thinking about strategically voting then?
Probably. We hate to. I mean, we just don't want the Conservatives in. Flat out no.
Why?
We don't like
no
the. We don't like their stand on anything. We didn't like the provincial Conservatives, the dirty campaigning, and I do think at this point that Prime Minister Carney would be the best to take us out of this mess. That's I think our bottom line.
I think some of the parties are promising things that we know in our heart we'll never get that promise.
Like what?
Oh, well, health care, the taxes, tax relief, and this type of thing. That's not going to work. It can't work.
And what makes you say that? Are you thinking they're over-promising and they don't have the money to spend on it?
Over-promising. Yeah.
They have to deal with the tariffs. I mean, that is going to crucify our country, let alone our province. So somebody has to deal with that. But I mean, to promise this thing, like Ernie's saying, things that we know there's not enough money to cut all those taxes. And I personally wish they would lower the ceiling. If they're going to cut taxes, then up to $1 million. Well, what about the people like 500,000 and below? That would save a lot of money, and if you can afford $1 million house, you probably can afford the tax.
Why isn't Pierre Poilievre the right person to move forward for Canada, in your view?
Well, he's new, and compared with Mark, I think Mark's got the advantage, and
Mark's new too, though. Mark's new to politics.
He's
in finance.
He's finance. He's been around the block or two, and I think he's a better person.
And pardon me calling the Liberal leader Mark so casually, but Mark Carney, of course, yeah.
Prime Minister Carney, to me, has the maturity. To me, Mr. Poilievre, he's just all the attack ads. He doesn't say particularly what he's going to do. He's knocking the other party. Prime Minister Carney is using a lot of common sense, and hopefully his past experience in finance will help us through this U.S. crisis.
Have you met any of the candidates?
Oh, yes. No, Leila has come to our apartment, Pioneer Landing, on 2 different occasions. I did a Remembrance Day service, and we invited her, and she came, and 2 years in a row.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's your NDP representative now, the incumbent.
Yes. Yeah, and we've also had the Liberal candidate come about 3 or 4 days ago. He's a retired teacher, And I mean, I would put my support behind him, but as I said before, we are such an NDP area that I'm not sure he could make it. You know, so I guess we want to put our vote where it counts.
So that was Mona and Ernie Sedleski, voters here in Elmwood-Transcona, who I ran into earlier this week. I met when we were out for a couple hours in this riding, touching base with what voters are saying that they need in the upcoming election and what they're looking for in the campaign. Still ahead, we're going to hear live from the Liberal Party candidate here and also the NDP candidate.
Narrative, lyric, heroic, romantic, verse, or prose. The 2025 CBC Poetry Prize is on. Send in your best unpublished poem or poetry collection. Up for grabs, cash prizes from the Canada Council for the Arts, a 2-week writing residency at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, and your work published on CBC Books. Contest closes June 1st. For rules and more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
Time right now is 10 to 7 on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube this morning, wherever you're watching us. Thank you very much. And if you want to join us and have some coffee, we're at the Sal's out on Regent Avenue West at 1570, talking to voters here in Elmwood-Transcona. Next on the show, let's talk about something that came up on the program yesterday. As the tensions between Canada and the U.S. continue to grow, so are fears about how we'll be treated individually when we cross the border to the United States. So we had an immigration lawyer on, Heather Siegel, about what she's been hearing from clients and the advice she's giving people when they cross the border. We asked you to call us and tell us what you think and what experiences you've had.
Hello, my name is Christopher Curtis Mackey. This past week, I came through Sault Ste. Marie, through Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and it was the easiest border crossing I've ever had. They only asked 2 questions: why are you coming to the States, and where do you live? I had so much fear-mongering with recent anecdotal stories of people being detained without lawyer, without cause, and all the rest of it, even to the point where they were supposedly checking cell phones for any commentary you might have said anti-Trump or anti-U.S. So I literally deleted all my apps, took out all my phone passwords for the same apps, and so on and so forth. It turns out I didn't need to at all. But it just goes to show how the level of fear of crossing into the U.S. is, I think, probably worse now than even at 9/11.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I'm just commenting on crossing the border to the States. And I think it's really important to emphasise how extreme and serious this is, and how these are the actions of a government that is hostile. It's not normal.
Good morning. It's Julie Gard calling about this morning's interview with a travel person who gave advice about crossing the U.S. border that seems to be oblivious to the actual problems that many people have. I mean, I think she's saying don't, wipe your phone and so on. There's an article in today's Globe which confirms what we already know, which is that people with Canadian passports but a birthplace in places like Iran are the ones who are being targeted. Actually, you can't do much about the fact that Canadian passports do have your birthplace on the passport. That is the passport that they've issued you and the one you have to use. So it's actually specifically racist, this policy. And so it isn't just about whether you've said anything unpleasant about Donald Trump. It's also who you are. And I think that sort of gets missed here in this, you can just learn to, get around it, or you can live with it. You can't live with it if you have family in the U.S. and you happen to be a Canadian, of Iranian or other, descent, a descent from a country that Donald Trump happens to think is a problem because of his racist views. So I think that needs to be clarified, that, we can't just be cheerful and sort of get around this. This is actually a serious problem for many people, and we are not all privileged and white.
So those were some of the listeners that called us yesterday around crossing the border and their thoughts around it. By the way, I need to say this. We did reach out to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. A spokesperson said in an email less than 0.1% of travelers have had their devices searched, and that number has not changed since 2021, nor has there been an increase since Trump became president. So as our guest said yesterday, I think people have fears, but the stats don't bear out those fears, at least according to the border officials and customs. 788-3205 if you want to weigh in on anything. 6:55 right now. We've just got a couple of minutes to talk to our next guest. We had a challenge hooking up with him, but I'm glad he's here. His name is Pau Pujolas. He's an associate professor of economics at McMaster University. And let's talk about Trump's Liberation Day. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Why do you think Canada and Mexico were given what amounts to a pass somewhat yesterday on this tariff list?
It's unclear what the pass means at this point because Trump keeps flip-flopping. So we may have a pass yesterday, but we may not have a pass tomorrow or next week or a month from now. And this is the real problem, the uncertainty that all this thing is causing. It's gonna undermine all the confidence and all the trust of investors in the U.S. and that's pretty bad. The other bad thing of this so-called Liberation Day is that it's liberation of the 21st century. I guess we're going back to the 19th century. We are having outbreaks of measles, and now we are going to have that governments are going to start putting tariffs again. This is the dismantlement of the free trade world order that we have enjoyed over the last 70 years, where goods have been cheap and we have been able to ship things all over the globe. Trump is coming in, he's putting a massive barrier in the U.S., and he's probably going to give wings to other protectionist politicians elsewhere in the globe. And it's pretty bad. We are in a bad spot. This should not be happening. It's going to be very costly. It's going to make people suffer job losses, like we are seeing already in the Windsor plant of Stellantis. It's going to make consumers suffer price increases in the goods that they are buying because of all these tariffs. It's going to be a very challenging situation.
Yeah, and certainly we're not forgetting about the tariffs on aluminum, steel, automobiles, as you've been alluding to here. I mean, that 25%. So, we're going to see some big changes to our economy. Just as a question here, I'm wondering moving forward, what is your advice to Canadian politicians and policymakers in this moment about how they should handle this?
So all the premiers of all the provinces and territories have to once and for all sit at the table and agree to dismantle all the interprovincial trade barriers that we have. It doesn't matter where a good or a service is being made. It should be sold and bought anywhere else in the country. As long as we are one country of Canada, it doesn't make sense that I put a barrier just because you happen to be in a different province. So that would give us a massive boost in our economy. Another thing that politicians should do is start dismantling all the regulated industries that are having a lot of monopoly power, that are hurting productivity. They are hurting consumers with their practices. Most notably, perhaps, is the supply management of dairy products, but there are many more in the country. And finally, the last thing that they should do at the federal level anyways is to go to a bunch of our allies, which we still have in the European Union, in the UK, in Japan, in South Korea, in Australia, and start signing trade agreements that are very comprehensive, that basically treat a product made in, say, Tokyo
new
the same
markets.
way.
New markets, new agreements, yes, around the world.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Appreciate your time. I know it was brief, but we really appreciate all the analysis you packed in for us there. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
That is Pau Pujolas. He's an associate professor in the Department of Economics at McMaster University. More analysis on World Report. Right now, though, Heather Wells is here ahead of World Report at 2 minutes to 7.
Good morning. Well, Canadian building materials escaped new tariffs from Donald Trump yesterday. Liz Kovach at Supply Build Canada is shocked her industry is immune for now. Kovach says it doesn't mean it's the end of more threats. Brandon University is seeing international student applications plunge. President David Doherty says it has been slammed by federal policies to slash the number of international student permits across the entire country. He wants to see Manitoba universities get a most favored institution status to allow more international students. I'll be back with more news at 7:30.
Traffic's fine. The high today in Winnipeg is going to be 3 degrees and a 30% chance of flurries. There could be some freezing drizzle out there. Take care, folks. It's 1 degree right now. We're live at Elmwood-Transcona. We're going to hear from our voters in this part of the city in the next hour, including a couple who says the Liberals have had 10 years and they're ready to give the Conservatives a shot. And another voter who voted PPC in the last election, but he's planning on changing his vote. Where will it land? We'll find out. Leila Dance will be our guest. She was a federal MP for just 6 months here before she had to hit the campaign trail again for this election. We'll find out why the NDP candidate for Elmwood-Transcona says she still believes she's the right person for the job.
Today on The Current.
Oh, my back. Your back is acting up again. Your muscles are sore and stiff. You can hardly bend.
I'm Mark Kelly. Millions of Canadians suffer from back pain, and although new research says there isn't much you can do to solve it, there are ways to prevent it. How to manage back pain. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young.
President Trump has just announced a series of measures that are going to fundamentally change the international trading system.
The U.S. tariffs on dozens of countries globally are causing chaos in some very powerful economies. Canada managed to avoid U.S. President Donald Trump's broad swath of new tariffs announced yesterday, but it is still waking up to new economic pain this morning in the form of tariffs on the auto sector. Kate McKenna is following developments from our Parliamentary Bureau. And Kate, these tariffs are already having an effect on assembly plants in Windsor, Ontario. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, just hours after President Donald Trump made his Rose Garden global tariff announcement, the union representing the workers at the Stellantis assembly plant in Windsor said workers will be off the job for 2 weeks starting Monday, and more changes are expected within the coming weeks. It says the primary driver behind the decision was Trump's auto tariffs, which came into effect at midnight. The tariff applies to vehicles made outside of the United States, but it's only levied on the value of all non-U.S. content in the vehicle. Since Canada and the United States have integrated supply chains, most Canadian vehicles will be tariffed less than 25%. Flavio Volpe is the head of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association.
And I can't believe I just heard Ontario's representative in Washington say it's a good thing that we only have 12.5% tariff in an industry that is 6 or 7% profit margin. That's both sides of the border.
It's unclear at this point how many people will be affected.
And Kate, what kind of political response is being mounted in Ottawa?
We're expecting to hear from Prime Minister Mark Carney today. He's meeting with the premiers later this morning. The Prime Minister warned if the U.S. falls into a recession, that could affect Canada too.
There is going to be an impact on the U.S. economy, which will build with time. In our judgment, it will be negative on the U.S. economy. That will have an impact on us. But the series of measures will directly affect millions of Canadians.
Canada has already announced about $60 billion in countermeasures for tariffs already in place. A larger package could be coming in response to the auto tariffs. Canada has identified another $95 billion of American goods it could hit with tariffs, but so far Carney hasn't specified how he will retaliate.
Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Kate McKenna in Ottawa. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre calls Trump's latest round of tariffs an unjustified attack on Canada's economy. Tom Perry has more on what Poilievre told supporters at a rally in Kingston, Ontario last night.
Kingston, who's ready for a change?
Another big crowd for Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader speaking to roughly 4,000 cheering supporters in Kingston, addressing right off the top the latest moves by Donald Trump.
Canada must end its era of overdependence and weakness. We must be an economic fortress that can defend itself, that can stand up for its own people and put Canada first.
Canada fared better than others in this latest round of U.S. tariffs, but Conservative supporters like Deepak Matar acknowledge Trump has shaken up this election.
It's changed the landscape. It's changed how people are thinking in Canada.
Polls have shown the Liberals in the lead and suggest voters see their leader, Mark Carney, as the best bet to tame Trump. But as he looks around at a packed room of Poilievre supporters, John Lecomte shakes his head.
That's mainstream media. I'm not believing it.
Poilievre has spent more time in this campaign talking about building pipelines and cutting taxes than he has about tariffs, something a lot of his supporters want to hear. The Conservative leader is sticking to that core message, hoping more voters will see it as the best way to defend Canada against the U.S. and its president. Tom Perry, CBC News, Kingston.
We are watching to see how North American markets will react to the Trump tariffs. Markets around the world have already delivered their verdicts with significant drops in both Asia and Europe. I'm joined now by my World Report co-host, John Northcott. And John, what is the latest?
Marcia, tumbled, slumped, slid, sunk, cratered. Market watchers around the world are running out of words to describe what's going on today. Money doesn't sleep, and we've seen stocks and the U.S. dollar get beaten up as the trading day followed the sun around the globe. Japan's Nikkei down nearly 1,000 points. European markets dropping more than 2%. This as Goldman Sachs raises the possibility of a U.S. recession from 20% to a market-rattling 35%. Yet while the numbers matter, to be sure, in the big picture, it's the uncertainty that really has markets worried. Tim Harcourt is a former chief economist of the Australian Trade Commission.
There's a lot of on-again, off-again with the policies you're seeing from President Trump. The uncertainty is causing a lot of the market jitters more than the tariffs themselves, which we knew were going to come.
So, John, with the North American markets due to open soon, what are we expecting?
Marcia, if the futures trading is anything to go by, the trend, the wave, looks likely to continue. Dow Jones futures dropped 1,000 points. That's 2.5%, with market stalwarts like Nike, Apple, and Nvidia all down. Crypto, too, dropping. Gold, the traditional haven of those seeking safety, stayed where it's been in recent days at record highs. We'll see what the traders do when they get in front of their terminals this morning.
All right. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Marcia.
My World Report co-host, John Northcott. Trump's overhaul of global trade policy is drawing a sharp reaction from China. It was the country hit hardest by the tariffs announced yesterday. And today, Beijing is calling the U.S. president a bully. This is stoking fears of an escalating trade war between the world's two biggest economies. Yenna Lee reports.
Strong words by China at a foreign ministry press briefing in Beijing today in response to President Trump's sweeping tariffs. Spokesperson Guo Jiakun says China opposes the move and will take firm measures to safeguard its legitimate rights. China's Commerce Ministry has already pledged to deepen trade talks with the EU, Japan, and South Korea to counter Washington's moves. The additional 34% tariffs imposed by the US on Chinese exports brings total tariffs on Chinese goods to 54%. China has been the main target of Trump's trade actions. Cambodia was slapped with a 49% levy, Vietnam with 46%. Trump says both countries are being used by China to ship goods to the US. His administration also closed a loophole known as de minimis that has allowed China's e-commerce giants to reap huge profits from the US market. The move was on hold previously because of logistical problems related to goods inspections. The developments are deepening differences between Washington and Beijing. There's growing frustration in China over what many see as an effort to undermine the country's pandemic recovery as it faces major economic challenges. Yenna Lee for CBC News, Beijing.
There is strong reaction out of Europe this morning to Donald Trump's tariffs. Ursula von der Leyen is president of the European Commission. She says the U.S. trade war is a blow to the world economy.
Let's be clear-eyed about the immense consequences. The global economy will massively suffer. Uncertainty will spiral and trigger the rise of further protectionism. Inflation will go up, and this is hurting in particular the most vulnerable citizens.
The European Union falls into Trump's category of so-called worst offenders. It's being hit with an additional 20% tariff on goods exported to the U.S. Von der Leyen did not give specifics, but says Europe will fight back.
We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel. And we're now preparing for further countermeasures to protect our interests and our businesses if negotiations fail.
Keir Starmer says nothing is off the table as the UK enters what he calls a new stage in its trade relationship with the US. But the British Prime Minister would prefer conversation over combat.
Nobody wins in a trade war. That is not in our national interest. We have a fair and balanced trade relationship with the US. Negotiations on an economic prosperity deal, one that strengthens our existing trading relationship. They continue, and we will fight for the best deal for Britain.
Starmer is appealing for calm and did not mention any retaliatory tariffs. He told a meeting of British business leaders he will be guided by what is best for the British people and business. Hungary says it is withdrawing from the International Criminal Court. The announcement comes as Benjamin Netanyahu is in Budapest on a state visit. The Israeli Prime Minister is facing an international arrest warrant over his conduct in the Gaza war. Hungary's Prime Minister is refusing to enforce that warrant. And Canadians will hear from Prime Minister Mark Carney at 11:30 Eastern today. That will follow this morning's meeting with the premiers. Stay with CBC News for that coming up. That is the latest. For World Report, I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning from the east side of the city. I'm Marcy Marcusa. CBC is live on location in Elmwood-Transcona to cover this riding and the election campaign. We have candidates coming up, and we're talking to voters. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube this morning. Wherever you're joining CBC, thanks for being along for the ride this Thursday morning. And thank you to Sal's for hosting us. Salisbury House out here on Regent Avenue West, 1570, if you want to come down and join the conversation. We're going to hear what some people over their eggs are talking about this morning, about who they're voting for. A couple of undecided voters around us this morning. So that means that the candidates that we're going to have on in the next hour, maybe they'll be able to win votes. We will be hearing from Ian McIntyre, the Liberal Party candidate, after 8. We will also be hearing from Leila Dance. It is hers to lose. She is the incumbent here for the NDP. This riding has gone NDP every time since 1988, except for 2011 when the Conservatives won. Stay tuned. This is a live broadcast in Elmwood-Transcona. Really nice to be out this way. I also want to mention a few other things coming up on the show this hour. So we all are going to hear from some voters. We'll hear from a couple who says the Liberals have had 10 years and they are ready to give the Conservatives a shot. So we're going to hear why they say that and why they feel that's the right choice for them out here in this part of the city. And then a little bit later at 10 to 8 to the news of the day, we are going to be hearing how some Manitoba industries might be breathing a sigh of relief after being spared the worst of new tariffs announced by U.S. President Donald Trump yesterday, including the Manitoba Pork Council. Pork producers, we'll find out how they're feeling this morning, but also how they could still be affected, because remember, we're still in a land of potential counter tariffs and such. So complicated to see who's still affected, but we're going to have that interview coming up. Let's go to Heather Welsh. She has more analysis of other stories. Good morning.
Good morning. And we are going to hear from the president of the Bioscience Association of Manitoba, who says this sigh of relief about being left off that list of tariffs may be short-lived because the reverberations, she says, are bound to be felt in this country since dozens of our trading partners have been hit by those U.S. tariffs. So we'll hear more about that. Also, Manitoba's NDP government is backing off an environmental commitment it made shortly after taking office. Premier Wab Kinew admits Manitoba Hydro may not be fully green by 2035. He says they have to meet demands, and so the Crown Corporation is proposing a new fuel-burning station. We'll hear more about that in our next news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk is back at 541 Portage Ave. He's got your weather and your traffic.
Yes, 1 degree right now at the Forks here in Winnipeg. We are going to be warming up to 3 degrees today. There is about a 30% chance or so of flurries or rain showers. So we'll kind of see what hits us later today. So bring that raincoat with you if you are heading out the door this morning. I'll have a regional forecast for you later on this hour. As for traffic, I know we've been mentioning it the past few days here, but there is that closure on Archibald from Mission to Provencher. The southbound lanes are completely closed. You're getting rerouted onto Mission. Northbound is just down to 1 lane. That is until April 23rd. That is for sewer work. Otherwise, things are looking okay. A little bit slippery out there on the roads this morning, at least when I was biking in today. Might be a little bit slippery as well in the Interlake area, particularly around Grand Rapids on Highway 6 there. So be careful. Might be poor visibility as well, according to Manitoba 511. If you see anything going on out there, though, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, just a bit of a reminder about why we're on location in the federal riding here of Elmwood-Transcona. This is just the first of a number of ridings we're going to be in live. We love any chance to go out in the community with the show, of course, but also this is a chance, right, for people to have their say. Basically, it's a job interview for the candidates. What do you need in this upcoming election? Who do you need to lead you? Do you want change in your part of the city or the province? So that's why I mentioned before, we did invite this morning all of the candidates who are running in the riding to join us and be here live. We will hear from the NDP and Liberal candidates. We have already heard from the PPC candidate in the last hour of the program. Conservative candidate Colin Reynolds did not respond to multiple invitations to come on the show. We reached out both to him and his campaign team via email, text, Facebook Messenger at 5 separate times. We also attempted to reach his campaign office but could not. We did, however, meet Conservative voters while we were out in this riding. So let's hear from them. The couple you're about to hear from first says they haven't always supported the party. Okay, can I get your full name for CBC?
Deanna Pippis.
Nice to meet you. And you are?
Brian Pippis.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So you guys live out in this part of Winnipeg?
Yes, we do.
Transcona.
Transcona. How long you lived in Transcona?
Oh my God, 27, 30 years, somewhere there. Yeah.
Do you vote? Okay, first of all, before we kind of reveal what you're thinking this time around, do you vote in every election?
Yes, we're dedicated voters.
Okay. And so this time around, do you know who you're voting for?
I'm going for Polyev.
And yourself?
Yeah.
And me too, Polyev. Yep.
Tell me why you think he's the right person for Canada in this moment.
Well, after all the terms the Liberals have had in here, it's time to give somebody else a chance.
Yeah. And we feel that he's more honest than Carney. We just feel and Carney is more secretive. Okay. So we're going for Polyev. Yeah.
So there's something about Carney that makes you feel like he's secretive, like you don't feel like you have trust with him.
Yeah, I just don't think he's the guy anyway. You know, he snuck in there in the last minute and started running. So, I mean, what do we know about him, really?
What questions might you have for either any of the candidates or for any politicians that would want you? Do you have any questions that you want to put to anybody? Like, what are you going to do for me in this way or that way? Or are you feeling good about what the Conservatives...
Whatever they do, I'll be happy. I mean, except talking about it all the time, start doing something about it. Yeah, that's the problem.
Have you generally voted Conservative the whole time, or did you used to vote? Does your vote move around depending on the year and who's running?
I was in the first time when the Liberals, when Trudeau got in, but after a couple of years with him, things changed.
Yeah.
You know, so
you voted Liberal in the past?
Yeah, in the past I voted Liberal, yeah, but not now anymore. Yeah, I had enough of those guys. Yeah.
Trying something different. Yeah. Now, what are the issues? Like, some people are saying it's the economy for them. Some people are saying it's, sovereignty in the states.
Well, I just feel we need housing, and the economy it's terrible. But I just think the whole Trump thing is taking over, and the Liberals are running away with it. But people forget how bad they've been for the last couple of years. So that's the whole thing for me. I don't need another couple of years with these guys. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Another couple of years, I just didn't hear you.
Well, yeah, I don't need a couple of years with another term with the Liberals in power, right? Because we see what the country's like now.
So it's a change election for you.
Yeah,
You're voting for change.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I actually feel that Pierre will be more, he'll stand up to Trump. Because I don't think Carney will.
That's Deanna and Brian Pippis. I met them outside of a No Frills on Plessy Road, or if you're from Transcona, you might say Plessis Road. That's what my aunt always said, earlier this week. She is a retired government worker, by the way. He is a retired hairstylist. My next guest, however, Sterling Netzlaw, is not retired. In fact, he's currently out of work due to health and medical issues, he shared. In the last election here in Elmwood-Transcona, his vote went for the PPC. I spoke with him deeper in Transcona. We were outside a different grocery store in the neighborhood where he's lived for 21 years. Do you always vote the same way, or has your vote changed over the years?
So I usually have voted Conservative. We've always been Conservative. But when we had Scheer during the lockdowns, there was a feeling that sort of every political party was saying the same thing, that the Conservatives weren't really standing for conservative values. There was a feeling, at least in my family, that maybe, because there's the political compass, right? You have the left and the right, but you also have authoritarian and libertarian. And so we tend to be more libertarian. So we felt that the lockdowns were rather authoritarian. Now, of course, we can all look back and see that there was some issues. I understand that the government and corporation, all this stuff, didn't really understand what was going on, but there was a frightening worry that this could result in, you give the government power to fix a problem. It's very difficult for them to take that power back.
So I feel like something shifted, at least for your family. You said you'd always sort of voted Conservative. Yes. And then during COVID, some of the worries about some of the government control over different things.
It kind of felt like no matter who you're picking, you're basically picking sort of, and this is me personally, I started to feel that you're picking rich people who don't have a connection to you, they don't care about you, so it doesn't matter what stripe they are, they're sort of all in the same vein. I've been seeing the NDP seem to actually care less and less about the working class folk, and I've seen the Conservatives seem to care less and less about the working class folk, and I've never really cared for the Liberals anyway, so I don't think they've ever been for that.
So here we are in 2025. Yeah. It sounds like after voting, a similar way for most of your life, some things have shifted. You're going to go to the polls. Do you know how you're voting this time?
Well, yeah, so I was looking at the PPC, I'll admit that. There's some things I don't like about them, there's some things that I do. They tend to be more libertarian. They were arguing about some issues that everyone else was ignoring. Now, they have some weirdos in them, definitely. Unfortunately, I felt that the Conservative voices we had a brain drain where the Conservative voices started to drain out of the Conservative Party. And then you let some weirdos in. So
what do you mean by that? So if we stay with the PPC, you said there's things you like, there's things you don't.
Right. So, I mean, it's a populist movement, right? So you get elements of, I think that it's exaggerated how many genuine racists were among them, but obviously there was going to be some Trumpian elements.
Did that worry you?
Not worry me, because I didn't think they'd ever be in power. That was sort of the thing. Voting for them was a message to the Conservatives, please bring back the smart people who left in the PPC, leave the rest of them, and make the Conservatives conservative again.
So now, what do you do in this election?
Well, Poilier, I was waiting. I was listening to Poilier. I wanted to hear some things from Poilier. I wanted to hear him crack down on immigration. I don't have any issues with immigrants, but we think we've gone too far. Housing crisis is crazy. I wanted him to say some genuine things that I knew would rustle some feathers, but I feel that is necessary to say. So I was listening. I'm not going to vote for you unless you actually stand on some of these issues. So he's come out against that. There needs to be a dial back of the immigration. He's talked about tax cuts and those sorts of things.
Were you voting Conservative, or are you still not sure?
Well, I'm voting Conservative. So the Liberals have pushed for the tax. The thing about the Carney is he's not elected. He was brought in to replace Trudeau. So they've tried to market themselves as being somehow different than the previous administration, but they have all the same people.
So the candidates are going to be on our program actually later in the week. We're going to the Salisbury House to sit down with them. Yeah. And we're giving people the opportunity. Do you have any questions for the candidates that you would like to ask? Either since you said you're likely voting Conservative, could be for the Conservative candidate, or it could be for one of the others.
Yeah, so I would want to ask the Liberals, the Liberal candidate, how they feel they're going to be. What is the new Liberal? What is their new platform? What are they standing for? Are they willing to separate themselves from everything that they've sort of gone on with? Are they going to actually care about people? I think that if all three parties got off their high horses and went to the working class people, yes, to people of varying different beliefs and backgrounds, but also the working class Canadians who've been here, and I'm talking second or third generation immigrants, I'm talking people who have raised here, and I'm not talking skin color.
I feel like they're out of touch with working class.
Yeah, like all types of working class. Yeah. So I would like to see them get off their high horses, stop trying to play the international game where they care about what their friends in other politics care about, and say, what are you doing for the housing crisis? What are you going to do for people can't find work? What are you going to do for these new kids? How are they going to grow and build skills?
Thank you so much for your time, Sterling. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that was Sterling Netzlaw, a voter here in Elmwood-Transcona. We're live at the Sal's at 1570 Regent. And there's probably about, a dozen people in here having breakfast. We're going to share some of their thoughts in a moment. Some are too shy to come to the mic, but they were sharing their thoughts with us. We're grateful. But Jack Simpson's on the mic. He wasn't shy. He's just moved back from Vancouver, in fact. But he was here long enough to vote in the by-election in the fall in Elmwood-Transcona. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So tell me how you voted in the by-election last year.
I voted for Ms. Dance.
Okay, so that's your incumbent NDP, Leila Dance. Yeah, I'm going to slide your mic just up a little bit there. This is all live radio. Perfect, Jack. And so tell me what drew you to her, and does she have your vote this time?
I voted for her because she was the only one that I really knew, albeit briefly. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure this time. The only thing I'm positive is I'm not going to vote for the Conservatives.
Why not?
Well, because I think the fact that the PC candidate did not make himself available for this show is sort of indicative of what Pierre Poilievre is all about keeping media at bay and just doing his own announcements and stuff like that.
We didn't plant Jack, by the way. If you're watching on the YouTube, you're going to notice he's got a CBC jacket on. He literally just walked in here. Maybe we were broadcasting here, but we didn't put you here. We've never met before. No. What is it about the NDP that you said you met her? So do you vote for the candidate or do you vote for the party when you usually vote in federal elections?
Well, I prefer to get to know the person and the party I'm thinking of, but I'm thinking that the NDP is more for as Stephen Holt said, more for or the fellow before Sterling.
Last guest,
is more for the working person, and of which I was. But I think, to be honest, I think their chances overall, federally, are slimming.
Yep.
Locally, provincially, they're doing fairly well.
Why do they resonate with you, or why does the working class why does that resonate with you when you think about your life here? You live in this riding, but actually you live in East Kildonan. That's still part of this riding here. What are the issues, daily that you wish any party would get on with it and improve in your life?
Well, being retired, I'd like to see a bit more money come back, for CPP and OAS, and housing is a big issue. I mean, in Vancouver, it's
astronomical
issue, and
yeah.
Here it's just sort of in the high altitudes.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I was just going to ask you as a closing question here, why you moved back from Vancouver to Manitoba?
Well, whenever I was living in Vancouver and came back to Winnipeg for a holiday, it was like I was coming home. And when I went back to Vancouver, I was there, but it never had that draw to feel like home. It was a place to live and work and play, and that was about it. And so I decided to come home.
Well, welcome back home. We're glad that you were here on CBC with us to share how you're going to be voting in the upcoming campaign. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
That is Jack Simpson. I just came in for a coffee here at Sal's. If you want to come in and talk to us, maybe you'll have an opportunity to ask a candidate a question. We've got the Liberals and the NDP coming up here live. Please do. 1570 Regent Avenue West. It's time for sports. Scott Regere's been standing by waiting to talk to us about the Jets. Trying to get back in the win column tonight. The road trip continues, Scott.
Yeah, and this will be a tough one, Marcy, for sure, against a fellow division leader in the Vegas Golden Knights, just like the Jets, who fell in their previous game against LA. The Golden Knights are coming off of a disappointing performance the last time out. For them, it was a loss to the injury-depleted Edmonton Oilers. So something's got to give tonight. The Jets, by the way, got a bit of scoreboard help last night in their pursuit of the President's Trophy as the top team in the league standings. That's because Washington, the team they're going head-to-head with, got routed by the Carolina Hurricanes. So Winnipeg in the driver's seat in terms of winning the President's Trophy, although that might not be a great thing. Historically, after all, winning teams when it comes to the President's Trophy have not gone on to hoist the Stanley Cup. The last to win both, Chicago, way back in 2013.
Let's go to curling next, Scott. Canada's a shoo-in to make the playoffs now at the Men's World Championship, right?
For sure. Brad Jacobs, Marcy, beat Norway and Czechia yesterday in pushing his record to 7-1, which is tops among all nations in Moose Jaw. The recipe to Canada's success, pretty simple. Incredibly accurate shot making. All stars of the sport, the team of Jacobs, Mark Kennedy, Brett Gallant, and Ben Hebert, are the only one at the Bonspiel constantly throwing in the 90 percentile range. Jacobs, though, says the success has much to do with mindset as much as talent. He curled for decades alongside his cousins, EJ and Ryan Harnden, winning Olympic gold, among other things. But Jacobs did it while putting immense pressure on himself, and he says since they chose to go their separate ways in 2022, things have improved.
The final year that I played with my cousins was a year for me to really let go, and I think that something that helped me with that was knowing inside that I was going to take a little bit of a break from the game. Really helped me relax and put less pressure on myself, and that's the way I intend to be for the rest of my career. At the end of the day, win or lose this thing, the sun's going to rise tomorrow for everyone, and we'll all be okay. As long as our families are healthy, I think that's a good attitude to have, and that's where we're sitting.
Words to live by there, not just in the world of curling. Jacobs takes that attitude into today's matches against China and Switzerland. He is trying to lead Canada, Marcy, to its first men's world title since 2017.
And in baseball, the Jays continue to roll.
Yeah, they beat Washington. They swept the Nationals, actually, in their series, so now they have a record of 5-2, their best start to a season in 14 years. And they've earned their day off today, their first of this young season. They'll start a series against the Mets in New York tomorrow.
All right, thanks a lot, Scott. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Sounds good.
The hot spot in Winnipeg right now, 1 degree. Hot spot is Winnipeg, rather, 1 degree. The cold spot is Thompson at -15. Traffic is moving smoothly, we understand. It could be a little slick, 788-3093 if you need to reach us. Still ahead, Leila Dance, and I apologize because I've mispronounced her name earlier, but she will be the next on the hot seat here at Sal's at Regent Avenue West. She is the incumbent here. She is the NDP candidate in Elmwood-Transcona, and that's why we're here, to hear why she says she deserves your vote if you vote in this riding in the upcoming election. So that's live right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30 it is 1 degree. It's a cloudy start to Thursday. Slight chance of flurries this morning. Showers this afternoon, possibility. And still on the cooler side, a high of 3. U.S. tariffs on dozens of countries globally are causing chaos in some very powerful economies. Canada managed to avoid U.S. President Donald Trump's broad swath of new tariffs announced yesterday, but it is still waking up to new economic pain this morning in the form of tariffs on the auto sector.
President Trump has just announced a series of measures that are going to fundamentally change the international trading system.
As Prime Minister, Liberal leader Mark Carney is going to spend most of today on Parliament Hill. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is also in Ottawa. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is in Oshawa. Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet starts his day in Quebec City. Green Party co-leader Jonathan Pedneau is in Montreal. Also tonight, all party leaders are going to be interviewed in French on Radio Canada. Well, the head of the group representing Manitoba's bioscience industry calls this a short-term sigh of relief. That is how Andrea Ladesseur received news U.S. tariffs left Canada relatively unscathed. But although not on yesterday's long list of countries Donald Trump hit with blanket tariffs, Ladesseur says the impact will inevitably still be felt in Canada.
Our supply chain is so interconnected that the number one export out of Manitoba is medicine, and those markets are around the world. We have a product the world wants. Same with our innovations in agriculture. When we look at emerging agriculture systems like India, we know we have the technology, the knowledge, the commercialized technology that they're going to need to really advance how they farm.
Ladesseur says there will also be humanitarian impacts because many of the targets for Trump's tariffs are underdeveloped countries. Now, the futures market is pointing to a big drop for U.S. stock markets when trading begins this morning. Stock markets in Europe and Asia were down following the news of yesterday's tariffs, and there will be details on stock markets in Canada and the U.S. when they open for trading in 1 hour from now. You can find the latest news nationally and internationally coming up on World Report at 8. Manitoba's NDP government is backing off an environmental commitment it made shortly after taking office. Premier Wab Kinew admits Manitoba Hydro may not be fully green by 2035. His government had committed to stop using fossil fuels to generate power by that year. But in order to meet demand, the Crown Corporation proposed a new fuel-burning station in February. The two 250-megawatt turbines would likely have to use natural gas, although Kinew says there is always a chance for some other source.
The reality is this: we're going to add 500 megawatts to the grid with a thermal generation facility here in Brandon, right? So you're going to see more electricity added to Brandon's Manitoba hydropower. We're adding the PACE project outside of Portage La Prairie, which means more power is going to come into Westman, to the Brandon market in particular. Hundreds of millions of dollars of construction activity there. So again, you're going to get more power into the region that way.
Kinew says Hydro has to weigh the need for renewable energy against the future power needs of the province. Applications for Brandon University international students are plummeting. BU used to get more than 2,800 international student applications in a year. Now it's seeing just over 1,200. Student Union International Representative Janine Campbell says federal caps on international students have made Canada appear less welcoming. She says it has potential students looking elsewhere to study.
There are a lot of people that Canada is like their dream country, and now because they're not able to either afford it or they don't want to go through the longer process of getting a study permit, it's just kind of sad.
In September, Canada's immigration minister placed tight caps on student permits to 437,000 in 2025 and 26. That is down from about 485,000 permits in 2024. Campbell wants to see more students allowed into the country. And a new study has found the strongest evidence yet. A vaccination for shingles can cut the risk of dementia. Researchers tracked the health records of nearly 300,000 older adults in Wales. They found those who received a jab called Zostavax were 20% less likely to develop dementia within 7 years. It is still unclear what is causing the unexpected benefit. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I'm old now. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, but I'm in the category now where I can get the shingles vaccine. So
yes,
how interesting, Heather.
It is, and you know what? I don't know if they need to be updated. I've had mine. I feel like maybe I want another.
Yeah, I know, right?
I don't know
super
if you can
interesting
do that.
research. Yeah, I don't think you can double up, but yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, before weather and traffic, you want to hear what some voters are saying out here in Elmwood-EK?
Yeah, sure do.
Okay, I should be saying Elmwood-Transcona. That's my roots showing there. But we are at the Salisbury House. We're on Regent Avenue West. We're pretty much just at the entrance to Transcona, if you know this part of town. But this is 1570 Regent Avenue West. So it's starting to fill up in here. We have been talking to some voters. Some of them don't want to share the mic, but they want to share their opinions. So one voter we talked to out here for our morning grill said they're undecided. But, they are decided, this voter. They are voting Liberal. They say they vote for the party and not for the person. And they also didn't think Trudeau needed to go, but he still is going to be voting for the Liberal Party. So regardless of what's going on there, that is how he is voting. Now, interesting because last time he shared he voted Conservative. We also talked to Les this morning. I should say our producer Donna Carrero has been working the room. Les says he's undecided. He says it's, quote, too much of a schmozzle. He knows he's not voting NDP. He says for him it is between the Liberals, Conservatives, or the PPC. So we've sure had a lot of opinions this morning. We've had undecided, we've had strategic voters, we had party faithful voters. So this riding is an interesting one. However, when you look at its history, it has gone NDP. It was Conservative, though, back in 2011. Well, as we mentioned, this is about hearing from you, the voters, but it's also about hearing from the people that want your vote. It has been 6 months since Leila Dance won this riding of Elmwood-Transcona in that federal by-election last fall. On one hand, it was a win. She managed to hold on to the NDP seat after her predecessor, Daniel Blakey, stepped down. But she beat out the Conservative candidate by just 4 percentage points. That's a fraction of what Blakey posted in the previous election. And this is a riding that, as I mentioned, has almost always voted NDP. And now it's been redrawn. And it's been redrawn, if you look historically, to potentially favor the Conservative vote, because it's including the area that pushes further east of here into the RM in the community of Dugald. So Leila Dance is here to talk about what the NDP needs to hold on to the riding this time around. Thanks for being here live.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So what an amazing time to enter federal politics. I mean, when you won that by-election, what have this last 6 months been like for you, Leila?
A whirlwind is probably a good way to describe it. I won, and then it was within a few days I was in Ottawa and trying to grasp what that looked like and learn all the rules of the House of Commons. So yeah, it's been very busy and a really big learning curve.
What is different on the campaign trail this time around? Are you hearing different concerns? Like, how much are you feeling a difference?
For the most part, a lot of it is very similar when we talk about affordability, so cost of groceries and housing. Healthcare is another one that we heard during the by-election and we're hearing again this time around. I think the big change is probably what's happening south of us. So the tariffs, some of the rhetoric that Donald Trump is touting every day and how that can affect Canadians. So that's probably something new that I definitely didn't hear during the by-election, but I'm now hearing on the doorsteps.
You mentioned housing, so I'm going to put a voter question about housing to you here. Gail Garner-Delisle wrote in. She said, Marcy, I can't be there, but if you could ask, and this is her writing, I'm a senior, I live in Beausejour, but I'm trying to get back to my hometown of Transcona. I love that people still call Transcona a town, thrown back to Unicity. But she writes this. She says, there's no housing for an apartment. It's insane. She says there's a list for every one apartment that I apply for. It's not a small list, but a big list. Please ask what their plans are to help. You said you're hearing about housing on the doorstep.
Yeah.
So what will the NDP, what's in the NDP plan that could help in this part of the city?
Yeah, so I am hearing a lot about housing, both houses and apartments. When we're talking about housing, when I'm in the House of Commons, the Conservatives are talking about affordable housing. And affordable to them is an $800,000 home. That's not affordable in our riding. So that's the number that they use over and over again. We really need to make sure that when we're building more homes, we're making sure that there is a percentage of that is truly affordable to this market and in this community, not what's affordable in Vancouver or Toronto, what's affordable just locally here. And then when we talk about apartments, I'm hearing about, a few years ago, you could get a 1-bedroom, 1-bath for just over $1,000, $1,200, and now it's closer to $1,500. That's something that people on a fixed income cannot afford. We need to make sure that when we're building, whether it be homes or apartment buildings, that a percentage of that stays and remains affordable.
So the Liberals have housing accelerator funds in their works. They've already started making partnerships to sort of build up some of that stock. What would the NDP be doing?
So the NDP has talked, and Jagmeet was in town yesterday and was talking about some of the things that they want to do. They want to make sure that some of the program in social housing that has been introduced doesn't get lost because of the tariffs and what that means, and the budgets that they've created have been increased, so they won't be able to afford those homes. So there's definitely been talks about that, and I know across the country, not necessarily here, but talking about using some of government land to continue to do it. I really just think we just need more houses, and the Liberals can talk about accelerating homes now, but they've had 9 years and haven't accelerated anything. So we really need to push and make sure that, again, affordable homes.
You are telling voters, I understand, who are thinking about voting Liberal to vote strategically. What do you mean by that?
So in Elmwood-Transcona, like you mentioned earlier, it has been an orange-blue riding historically. So if those who wanted to support Liberals chose to support Liberals, they're going to end up splitting the orange-red vote, and it will end up costing us, and we'll end up with a Conservative government or a Conservative representative here in this riding. So we need to, in certain ridings across this country, in mine specifically, we need to make sure that we're supporting the NDP. And we've seen some amazing things happen for Canadians and people in Elmwood-Transcona when the Liberals and the NDP have worked together. And that's dental care, health care, universal health care, pharmacare.
In terms of since the September by-election, you alluded to this, sovereignty concerns about the states. We're obviously in a trade war with the United States, so yesterday was an interesting day to change some of that, but still concerns. Obviously, 25% tariffs on autos coming. How has the conversation changed in the campaign trail? You said people are bringing that up as well, but what are they saying to you out here in Elmwood-Transcona?
So it's more about so when we talk about groceries, we heard a lot about price gouging and the cost of groceries that went up during COVID, and those prices never came down. So now, as we move into this next threat, this next economic threat that we're going into when it comes to tariffs, people are concerned about what their groceries are going to go up again. Like, what is that going to look like for them? Day-to-day prices. How is it going to increase them, and how are they going to be able to do that, especially when the cost of their income coming in, or their income coming in, isn't increasing. And for seniors, there's been no increase to their old age security or CPP.
And what will the NDP do with those issues?
Yeah, so the NDP has talked about a bunch of different things. So price capping on essentials. We see it in northern communities all the time. We should see it here and be able to use that to make sure that the cost of essentials like milk and butter and eggs, baby formula don't go up. The other thing is that the NDP want to push to remove GST from those items as well. So that will lower some of those prices.
I have to ask you a trust question because earlier this morning we heard actually from people voting all kinds of different ways that they don't trust any politicians anymore. They actually don't even pay attention to what the promises are on campaign trail in some cases because they say they just don't feel they'll follow through. Why should people out here trust you?
So I'm a born and raised Transcona girl. Let's be honest. I've been here. I've been serving this community my whole life. I come from a family that has served this community. My parents were very much involved with community, which is how I was raised. So when I had my son, I was very much involved in the community. And I live in this area. You'll get to see me at the bank. You'll get to see me at grocery shopping or just out in the mall. And people regularly come up to me and go, I know who you are, and this is my concern. And I think that's important. And I have shown my dedication, in all my charitable work, but also to the community in different ways, that I'll continue to do that. Whether I'm in politics or not, that's just who I am and how I was raised. So I'll continue to do that.
Just because this is your area of the city, I just want to say to the wider audience listening this morning across Manitoba, if you haven't been out here in a while, you might be astonished at how much things have grown. You think Transcona is going to end, and then you just keep driving east.
Yeah, it's
so
definitely been a huge development here in the last 10 years, definitely.
Thank you very much, Leila Dance. As I'm saying to all of the candidates, good luck on the 28th.
Thank you very much.
That is the incumbent here for Elmwood-Transcona, Leila Dance. She's a federal NDP candidate. Earlier, we heard from PPC candidate Colin Watson. Later, we will hear from Liberal candidate Ian McIntyre. He'll be here live. Conservative candidate Colin Reynolds did not respond to multiple invitations to join us this morning.
Listen up to groundbreaking sounds. Listen up to new and emerging artists. Listen up to what's happening with your favorite musicians. Subscribe now to CBC Music's newsletter, Listen Up. Keep tabs on everything happening in music. News, exclusive live performances, the best new songs, and so much more. Subscribe now at cbc.ca/listenup.
Rogers weighed in on voting here. He's actually undecided, he says, in Elmwood-Transcona. He says, in his view, there's no one to vote for. No one is saying that they're going to raise the pension amount. I heard that concern about pension when I was out here for a couple hours, talking to people outside grocery stores for 2 hours the other morning, earlier this week. A lot of seniors out this way, and a lot of them saying they're not able to make ends meet. So here's Roger's question, quote, "My question is who's going to raise the pension so people can actually retire," end quote. 1,500 is not enough, and he's weighing in with his thoughts on that. So if you want to weigh in on what your concerns are, 788-3205. You can also call the listener line, by the way, if you can't make it out here to Elmwood-Transcona, and we are trying to get some of these issues into our candidate interviews as well. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC. I do believe, Corey Funk,
Hello.
that I completely forgot to ask you about weather and traffic because I was in such a political role.
All good. I get it. You like talking politics. So yeah, but I do have some weather for you. There's still other stuff going on in the province today. So right now in Winnipeg at the Forks, we are sitting at 1. We are going to be warming up to a high of 3 degrees today. There's about a 30% chance of flurries or rain showers today. So bring your rain jacket with you. It's going to be kind of similar, more chance of flurries flurries kind of throughout the province this morning. Brandon, -1 right now. You're going to be warming up to 0. 30% chance of flurries for you today. Similar case in Dauphin, -1 right now. Cloudy, going to be warming up to 2. Also about a 30% chance of flurries for you today. Up in Thompson, which is our cold spot right now in the province, you're sitting at -14, warming up to 0, but you have a 60% chance of flurries today. But you might get some sun as well as you make your way towards those flurries. Other than that, though, looking at your commute, might be a bit slippery out there on the roads and the highways. Be careful if you are, particularly on Highway 6, actually right in the interlake there around Grand Rapids. Manitoba 511 is showing poor visibility and covered highway conditions. So a heads up if you are heading the highway around there this morning. Otherwise, things are looking okay. But if you see anything going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey. You are with 89.3 FM on CBC. This is your public broadcaster out in the public. This is our community studio this morning, the Sal's on Regent Avenue West. Well, we've heard from, we were just talking pension. I was talking about seniors we met this week as we were out and about in the riding. And actually this morning we've heard from some folks that have identified as being seniors and retired. But we also ran into a young voter. A lot of parties are continuing to try to connect with young voters, like 22-year-old Ethan Shaw. He's studying at Red River Polytech. He lives deep in Transcona, he says, near the perimeter. He's called this area home for 7 years. Here's what he shared with me about why he says he's undecided and which way he's leaning.
So what don't politicians get about what if they want to connect with you, what do they need to be talking about? Maybe some of them are talking about it, but maybe some of them are missing it.
The obvious answer is like housing, right? I mean, like I'd like to buy a house, and I know a lot of my friends would too. But I do feel like they're talking about that. It's just I don't know how much belief I have in any politician at this point.
Got it.
Yeah.
Why is housing top of one of the big issues for you?
I just want to own a house at some point. I mean, a lot of people do, right? So.
Are you? I don't know how old you are.
22.
22. Okay. So you voted in past elections, or have you not voted?
I have and then haven't. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it depends on the year. Will you vote this year?
Most likely, yeah.
And when you decide whether or not you're going to vote, what process do you go through? Like what's made you go to the polls, and what makes you go, I'm going to not bother?
I don't know. It just depends on how hopeful I am about the election. But I know this area is mainly an NDP riding, right?
It has been in the past. Yeah, it has gone conservative as well, and it's been redrawn. So the Conservatives, there was a by-election last year, but still the NDP did win it, yeah.
Yeah.
When you vote, do you think about the leader, the party, or like when you're out here thinking, or you think about, like, what do you think about?
Well, I usually think about the person who's running in my neighborhood. Like, if I don't like the guy who's going to be representing Transcona, then why would I vote for them, right? I mean, the person who's running for the party matters, but I kind of would like to know the person running in my area more.
So when the federal parties say things like, we're going to help you with housing, what more specifics do you wish they would give you to make you more hopeful as a young person, as you said, hoping to own a place one day?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm just trying to get through school, and then when I have a full-time job, hopefully housing will be down by then. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not really looking at the housing market as much. I just see the prices and know that I'm probably going to have to rent with a friend or at least have somebody else paying mortgage with me, right?
Yeah.
Ethan Shaw, one of the voters here in Elmwood-Transcona, he's 22, and he says, of course, as you heard, he's concerned about being able to afford a house moving forward. Time right now is 9 minutes to 8 o'clock. We are live in Elmwood-Transcona, but I want to move to news of the day, and that it means talking about Trump. U.S. President Donald Trump saying he's going ahead with these previously announced 25% tariffs on all foreign-built vehicle imports, but Canada and Mexico appear to be exempt from these new reciprocal tariffs announced yesterday. A White House fact sheet says goods imported under the existing Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement on trade will not face Trump's latest round of reciprocal tariffs. So some industries are breathing a sigh of release. Liz Kovac is with the Supply Build Canada, which represents lumber retailers across the country.
I'm still a little shocked by this news. I was not expecting this, but I am happy to hear that whoever helped influence this decision, that they realized that the tariffs are really a bad idea. and they are an additional tax that the US customer would have to pay. Am I confident that the risk is gone? No. We're dealing with an individual who has had us on a whiplash journey. Yeah, that's the word that I see in all of media this last little bit. A lot of the decisions that we've seen don't appear to be rational.
That's Liz Kovach with Supply Build Canada. Well, the stakes continue to be high for our meat producers. The U.S. is Manitoba's pork's largest export market. Producers have already been reeling about ongoing trade wars with the U.S. and with China, and this is about counter tariffs that Canada put on place. Cam Dahl's General Manager of Manitoba Pork and with us live. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcia. If I would have known you were in Transcona, I would have dropped by. We're not very far away.
Oh, too bad. Too bad. Well, we'll hold your breakfast if you can still make it here, Cam. Are you breathing any sigh of relief this morning, or has nothing changed for pork producers because of what was announced yesterday?
No, yes, we are. Relief is a good word. We were preparing for the worst. We were preparing for a return to the 25% tariffs. And that would have had a very large, significant negative impact, not just for hog producers, but for Manitobans that depend upon the industry for their jobs. So yes, the job isn't over, but today the word is relief.
So tell me a little bit about, because people are getting lost sometimes in the tariff, counter tariff, the situation with China and then that tariff. What are you facing this morning from your understanding? Because the situation continues to move all these numbers.
Well, my understanding this morning is product moving into the United States and from plants like Brandon and Neepawa and Winkler are tariff-free, as are our live animal exports are tariff-free going into the U.S. So that is very good news. Yes, we are still facing 25% tariffs on product going into China, and that is problematic because we don't have other easy markets for the products that we ship into China. But going into the U.S. this morning is still remains tariff-free.
Where were you watching this yesterday as Trump pulled out that big some people are describing it as a game show looking board with all the tariffs. Where did you watch this and how nervous were you?
Well, really quite nervous. I was actually driving back from the Royal Winter Fair in Brandon when the announcement started. And again, it was real nervousness. There's been a great deal of stress on the farm these past 3 months. It's you can plan for market changes. You can plan for changes in prices in inputs, but you can't plan for political uncertainty. So the stress level has been extremely high, and it remains extremely high. And one of your previous guests pointed out that we don't know how long this is going to be in place, these exemptions. So we need to continue to work on diversifying our markets. We need to continue to work at breaking down interprovincial trade barriers, and we need to continue with that outreach to our U.S. counterparts on really stressing the value of the integrated market to consumers on both sides of the border and to farmers on both sides of the border.
Have you had a chance to connect with your partners in the U.S. about since this was announced yesterday, and how are they reacting?
Well, I think there's relief on that side of the border as well.
For people that don't know, Cam, I mean, we have obviously reported this a lot, but for context, how big and important is the trading relationship of agricultural goods between the U.S. and Manitoba?
Well, it's again, it's over $6 billion a year, all of agriculture. For Manitoba pork, it's our pork producers. It's when you combine both live animal exports, we export about 3 million live animals into the U.S. every year, and it really is our largest and most important market. So really good news this morning.
And just last, I guess, how do you feel about how Canada has been responding so far? Obviously, Prime Minister Carney has still promised Canada will fight tariffs with countermeasures. So what's your lens on that?
Well, at this point, given the fact that pork products and live animal exports are not part of the U.S. Tariff package. I would ask that U.S. pork products not be part of that as our retaliatory package as well.
Thank you very much for your time, Cam Dahl. I owe you breakfast.
Okay. Thank you.
Cam Dahl, only saying that because he said he was close by here, our live location, and could have been here, but we're grateful we had him on Zoom this morning. He is with Manitoba Pork Producers. Let's go to the news now and find out more analysis of other stories and developments this Thursday. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes. Well, because this country was left off that big, long list of countries being hit by Trump's tariffs yesterday, some are saying this short-term relief is not going to last. The president and CEO of the Bioscience Association of Manitoba says these reverberations are bound to still be felt here because dozens of our trading partners have been hit. We're going to hear more from her coming up. And Brandon University is seeing international student applications plunge. The president there says 1,600 fewer applications came in 2024 compared to the previous year. David Docherty says the drop comes after international student permit numbers for the entire country were slashed by the federal government. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Today's high 3 degrees in Winnipeg. It's cloudy out there. I hate the gray spring stuff, right? When the sun comes out, it's like a different world. But we won't see it today, I don't think, because we have a 30% chance of flurries, possible rain, freezing drizzle with us today. But we shouldn't complain. It's still pretty mild. And by next Wednesday, we could see some serious double-digit temperatures. But today, our high is just going to be 3 degrees, and we're sticking around 1 right now. On the morning drive, take it easy. Could be a little icy in spots. 788-3093 if you need us. In the next hour of Information Radio Live from Elmwood-Transcona here at the Salisbury House on Regent. We are going to talk to the Liberal candidate for this area and find out why he says he thinks voters are ready to give his party a chance this time.
Today on Q.
I'm Garby Bailey in for Tom Power. The acclaimed composer, lyricist, and playwright Britta Johnson always knew that theater would be a big part of her life. She'll tell you about bringing home her big breakthrough musical, Life After.
Creating a musical score to support that was very exciting and satisfying.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Mark Kelly. Millions of Canadians suffer from back pain, and although new research says there isn't much you can do to solve it, there are ways to prevent it. How to manage back pain. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Canada and much of the world is feeling the brunt of the new U.S. tariffs. Auto sector tariffs came into effect at midnight overnight. Flavio Volpe is head of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. He says these new tariffs, combined with the existing steel and aluminum tariffs, will be devastating.
At some point, on a publicly traded company, if you're booking losses that are in the millions at every assembly plant, and that's what we're talking about, $3, $4, $5, $8 million a day per production plant, you have a fiduciary obligation to your shareholders not to burn their money.
U.S. President Donald Trump has also unveiled a long list of countries with new tariffs. Canada is not on it for now, but the post-war trading system has effectively been blown up. These new tariffs are sending shockwaves through economic hubs in Europe.
I think they're an idiot, alienating themselves from the global market.
It's going to create enormous potential recessions in so many countries, so many economies. I think so many million people are going to be affected.
The world's changed now. I think it's going to cause a lot of issues for a lot of people.
We have more coming on the international reaction, and Mark Carney will make a public address in just over 2 hours. But first, Rafi Boudjikanian tells us what we know about Ottawa's response so far.
We talked about protecting Canadian industry and Canadian workers, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Industry Minister Anita Anand on the heels of a cabinet meeting to discuss U.S. President Donald Trump's latest round of tariffs. Mark Carney, back in Prime Minister mode, tried to say things could be worse.
He has preserved a number of important elements of our relationship, the commercial relationship between Canada and the United States.
But he still recognized the latest round of tariffs will hurt.
The fentanyl tariffs still remain in place. as do the tariffs for steel and aluminum.
Tariffs and the threat of more have defined large parts of this election. Carney will talk about countermeasures later today. He'll also be meeting with his provincial and territorial counterparts, discussing their next steps. Rafi Boudjikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre calls Trump's latest round of tariffs an unjustified attack on Canada's economy. Tom Perry has more on what Poilievre told supporters at a rally in Kingston, Ontario last night.
Kingston, who's ready for a change?
Another big crowd for Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader speaking to roughly 4,000 cheering supporters in Kingston, addressing right off the top the latest moves by Donald Trump.
Canada must end its era of over-dependence and weakness. We must be an economic fortress that can defend itself, that can stand up for its own people, and put Canada first.
Canada fared better than others in this latest round of U.S. tariffs, but Conservative supporters like Deepak Matar acknowledge Trump has shaken up this election.
It's changed the landscape, it's changed how people are thinking in Canada.
Polls have shown the Liberals in the lead and suggest voters see their leader, Mark Carney, as the best bet to tame Trump. But as he looks around at a packed room of Poilievre supporters, John Lecomte shakes his head.
That's mainstream media. I'm not believing it.
Poilievre has spent more time in this campaign talking about building pipelines and cutting taxes than he has about tariffs, something a lot of his supporters want to hear. The Conservative leader is sticking to that core message, hoping more voters will see it as the best way to defend Canada against the U.S. and its president. Tom Perry, CBC News, Kingston.
Even though Donald Trump did not announce any additional tariffs on Canada, the pressure from the existing ones is high. Even without a new front on a trade war, many in the business sector hope Canada's trade relationship with the U.S. can be restored. Anis Hadari explains.
I'm saddened to see that our 120-year partner and closest ally and biggest trading partner, we've got to the point where we're willing to put tariffs and counter tariffs on each other.
For Paul Colborne, the impact of tariffs on the oil and gas sector isn't just a money thing. He heads up Surge Energy in Calgary. And while his company isn't dealing with new U.S. tariffs this time around, he wants to see Canada avoid them entirely by negotiating.
They need our crude, they need our electricity in the east. If you understand the other guy's needs and you can get as close as you can to there, hopefully you can bridge a deal.
Existing tariffs are still in place. Think steel, aluminum, or automotive. But for now, Canada has avoided the heavy tariffs on Asia and Europe.
Estimates are it's going to cost U.S. households $5,000 more a year, given the levels they're seeing on goods from Japan and China, Taiwan, other markets.
Adam Legg is president of the Business Council of Alberta. He says one thing Canada should do is let things settle in the United States first.
Let the torment and the tornado dwell and develop in the U.S., and let them be their own advocates for change.
But while Canada may have dodged an immediate economic catastrophe, there's still damage from the existing measures. Auto manufacturer Stellantis is halting production in Windsor for 2 weeks, with the blame, at least in part, placed on U.S. tariffs. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
Trump's overhaul of the global trade policy is drawing a sharp reaction from China. It was the country hardest hit by tariffs announced yesterday, and today Beijing is calling the U.S. president a bully. This is stoking fears of an escalating trade war between the world's two biggest economies. Yenna Lee reports.
Strong words by China at a foreign ministry press briefing in Beijing today in response to President Trump's sweeping tariffs. Spokesperson Guo Jiakun says China opposes the move and will take firm measures to safeguard its legitimate rights. China's Commerce Ministry has already pledged to deepen trade talks with the EU, Japan, and South Korea to counter Washington's moves. The additional 34% tariffs imposed by the US on Chinese exports brings total tariffs on Chinese goods to 54%. China has been the main target of Trump's trade actions. Cambodia was slapped with a 49% levy, Vietnam with 46%. Trump says both countries are being used by China to ship goods to the US. His administration also closed a loophole known as de minimis that has allowed China's e-commerce giants to reap huge profits from the US market. The move was on hold previously because of logistical problems related to goods inspections. The developments are deepening differences between Washington and Beijing. There's growing frustration in China over what many see as an effort to undermine the country's pandemic recovery as it faces major economic challenges. Yana Li for CBC News, Beijing.
India is facing 26% tariffs, but its government is taking a calmer approach in its response. India's junior finance minister says Trump's responsibility is to U.S. citizens, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first priority is India. Modi's government is taking a wait-and-see approach. It is staying in touch with the Trump administration and wants to ensure their trade ties remain a pillar of mutual prosperity. The U.S.'s European allies are condemning Donald Trump's tariff plan. The president of the European Commission says Europe has been let down by its oldest ally. Ursula von der Leyen also says Trump has dealt the global economy a heavy blow, and she vows the EU will fight back. Crystal Gomansing reports.
We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us.
Strength in numbers. That's the pitch from Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president. She says every citizen around the globe could see the cost of food, transportation, and medicine increase. However, the 27 bloc of nations acting as a single market is powerful, even in the face of sweeping tariffs.
We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel. And we're now preparing for further countermeasures.
With tens of billions of dollars in counter tariffs in the works, European leaders hope to negotiate their way out of the economic storm, as does the UK.
Last night, the President of the United States acted for his country. Today, I will act in Britain's interest.
Meeting with about a dozen major business leaders in London, Keir Starmer vowed to protect the UK's economy. The Prime Minister consistently calls the current trading situation with the US fair and balanced. The UK was hit with a lower levy of 10%. Starmer is trying to soothe fears and keep markets from overreacting, saying the UK will respond with cool and calm heads. A move that could also help avoid drawing the U.S. president's attention. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. We're in our community studio this morning with Information Radio, your morning show on CBC, out at the Salisbury House on Regent Avenue West at 1570 for an election discussion. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is the riding of Elmwood-Transcona. We've been here all morning. We've been talking to candidates who have agreed to be here live with us. And this half hour in the program, we're going to meet and hear more from the Liberal candidate for this riding and find out why he thinks voters, he says, are ready to give his party a chance this time around. Last time around, he was finished a distant third. This part of the city has traditionally, and this riding has voted NDP, and once it did go for the Conservatives in recent years in 2011. So can the Liberals break through, especially when you see what is happening on the national picture with a new Liberal leader now? Will that have an impact here in Manitoba and in this part of Winnipeg? Stay tuned for that. But we'll talk to voters first, so stay with us. 8:10, the time right now. I'm not going to forget about weather, traffic, and headlines like I did last hour when I was on a political roll. So first, let's go to Heather Wells, who joins us with those headlines.
Good morning. Well, the head of the group representing Manitoba's bioscience industry calls it a short-term sigh of relief. That is how Andrea Ledesser feels after news the U.S. tariffs announced yesterday left Canada relatively unscathed. Still, she says the impact on the economies that are being hit will inevitably be felt in Canada because our supply chain is so interconnected. Manitoba's NDP government is backing off an environmental commitment it made shortly after taking office. Premier Rob Canoe admits Manitoba Hydro may not be fully green by 2035. We'll hear why coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, how are you doing back there at 541 Portage Ave? What's shaking in the weather?
There's not too much to worry about today, except for maybe a bit of a chance of flurries today here in Winnipeg, or showers, because it could go either way. So bring your raincoat if you are heading out. It is 1 right now at the Forks. We are heading for a high of 3. And as I look kind of at the forecast the next 3 days, that is going to be pretty much the exact same weather every day. Friday, Saturday, the high is 3. Some clouds, bit of chance of flurries as well tomorrow. But as for the commute, there is one issue to keep an eye out for. Grant and Stamford, there has been a collision. The southbound curb lane is blocked right now. So the east curb and middle lanes are blocked as well. So traffic signal, it's actually been hit and is actually on the roadway right at Grant at Stafford. So emergency vehicles are on scene there. So you may just want to avoid that intersection if you are heading in that direction. If you see anything else though going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, as I've been mentioning, this is a large riding in the east part of the city here out in Elmwood-Transcona, and it got larger since the by-election. Even last fall, it was redrawn to push past the perimeter into Dugald, so now includes the community of Dugald as well. And that means that a couple of streets in areas of North Kildonan actually went to a different riding, Kildonan St. Paul. So there's been some redrawing and some changes here. We have heard this morning from voters who are doing all kinds of things. We've heard strategic voters who said we'd like to vote Liberal, but here we're going to vote NDP because they didn't want the Conservatives in. We've heard from someone that voted PPC before and said now they feel like they're not the right party. They're going to vote Conservative. We've heard from undecided folks. We've heard from people that are voting NDP. People sitting down to have coffee here have shared this. Vic Pereira actually, Cornelius said he will vote NDP. He says he has known the candidate, Leila Dance, for years. But more importantly, he said she grew up here, which is obviously here in Transcona where we're sitting this morning. And so Cornelia said she knows us, and I want someone who knows us. So he looks at local candidates and obviously looks at their history and geography. Vic Pereira wrote to us on Facebook, actually, so we're gathering comments from all different streams. He said, quote, I find it very disconcerting when career politicians as well as leaders of political parties refuse to obtain the security clearances that have mandatory background checks, end quote. So there he's referring to Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservatives. So we can see that Vic will likely not be supporting them if he's finding that a concern, but he doesn't weigh in to say who he will be supporting. Gord McDonald did weigh in. Gord McDonald is another person that I met. I've been mentioning that I spent a couple hours out in this riding earlier in the week, and I was just talking to people went to 3 or 4 different grocery stores in the Transcona part of this riding, into the Elmwood part of this riding. And Gord McDonald was born and raised in Elmwood. And now that he's a senior, he says that pension reform is top of the list for issues for him in this election. He's 73 years old. I met him outside the Superstore just up the road from here, actually, on Regent earlier in the week. Gord, how long you lived in Elmwood?
All my life, 73 years.
Okay, whole life out here. So you know well that this riding has been held by different parties. And yeah, so what are you thinking heading into this election?
There's not much choice, is there? I don't really trust Poilievre. So I think we have to go with Carney and the Liberals. I think he's a better choice to fight against Trump. And I think a lot of Canadians do. So.
Have you voted Liberal in the past, or does your vote move around?
Pretty much Liberal, yeah. Except when Harper, I voted for him years ago, but pretty much Trudeau since then, and very disappointing, but
So you've been disappointed in Trudeau?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Liberals will get your vote, though, because would they have if Trudeau was still there?
Oh, I wouldn't vote for Trudeau again, never. Mark Carney I'll vote for. He's very astute in the economics and that day.
What issues are top of mind for you here in Elmwood-Transcona?
Pension reform. Absolutely.
Can you explain that? Pension reform? What concerns you?
The way they tax seniors now, they're all promoting go to work after 65. Well, I'm one that did go to work after 65 and was taxed the whole thing on 55%. How do you like that? If that's not some kind of reform needed, I don't know what is. So
they need to help you with the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. Every party right now, Liberals included, have done nothing for seniors. We need some help. There's people starving in this city right now. And forget about all the promises, because we know they don't follow through. So, let's just see what they can do,
It's interesting. You're the second person that said that to me, that sort of, despite what they're going to put forward, we actually don't believe them. So we got to vote based on other things and other hopes.
Yeah, there's an air of mistrust with all of them, And Singh, he's going down to, single digits in popularity right now. And he won't make it. There's no way.
So you're referring to whom?
Jagmeet Singh.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with Carney and see what happens, I seem to trust him more than the other. Poilievre's promising the world right now, and he can't deliver, let's face it,
Thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Gord McDonald is one of the voters here in Elmwood-Transcona.
Listen up to groundbreaking sounds. Listen up to new and emerging artists. Listen up to what's happening with your favorite musicians. Subscribe now to CBC Music's newsletter, Listen Up. Keep tabs on everything happening in music. News, exclusive live performances, the best new songs, and so much more. Subscribe now at cbc.ca/listen up.
8:18 is the time right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You are live with CBC this morning. We're out in Elmwood-Transcona. Now, right now it's cloudy and 1 degree in Winnipeg, and that's been about our temperature throughout the morning. Well, about 6 months ago, Ian McIntyre ran as a candidate for the Liberal Party in the federal by-election in Elmwood-Transcona in the fall. At the time, his party came in third. They got just under 5% of the votes. But a lot has changed in the political world since that election. Today, the Liberal Party is seeing somewhat of a resurgence in support across the country. Polls now suggest that federally they're neck and neck with the Conservatives. So what could this mean for the Liberal Party in Elmwood-Transcona this time around? Well, Ian McIntyre certainly wants to find out. He, again, is the Liberal candidate in this riding, and he joins us live at Sal's. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me here. Really appreciate it.
So for people that don't know you and are going to be voting and listening, what should they know about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a retired teacher with the River East Transcona School Division. I've worked there for 25 years, worked with kids with behavior issues, kids that had cognitive issues, and worked in resource departments and supported students with alcohol, drug, and violence.
Why have you turned to politics, and why are you running again this time?
I've always been a politician, I guess. My friends would say that, oh yeah, he was always like that. But I think the real thing that got me was diabetes medication and making diabetes medication free. Insulin was created here in Canada, and it had to be free. I wanted it to be free. And when the Trudeau government said that, we're going to make this free for all people with diabetes, I thought, yeah,
So that prompted you.
That was a big prompt for me to get in.
I mentioned that just 6 months ago you campaigned for a seat in the by-election. What is different in your view on the campaign trail this time around?
Well, we worked hard. We worked hard in the fall. Yep, 5%'s not great, but it is a complete 180 now. When I go to the doors, we're hearing very positive things about Mr. Carney, as you just heard from Gord. We're also getting people committing to the Liberals. I've had Conservatives tell me that I'm not voting for Poilievre. I'm going to vote Liberal, and I've had New Democratic Party members saying that we're going to vote Liberal this time.
I'm sure you've heard there's some strategic voting, though, that's specific to Elmwood-Transcona. We met a couple earlier that was on the air with us. They said that they would have voted Liberal, but they feel here in Elmwood-Transcona they need to vote for the NDP because they want to try to block a Conservative win, and they still view this as Conservative and Liberal race. What would you say to those voters about why they should choose the Liberal Party despite their concerns?
Well, MP Dance earlier this week said that she can't win unless Liberals vote for her. My pitch is vote Liberal. If the national polls are to be believed, this race is between the Conservatives and the Liberals. And who do you want in the seat of power, and who do you want as prime minister, and what government do you want? And this vote is coming down to either Conservative or Liberal.
Let's get a voter question in for you.
Absolutely.
Here. So Gord said that all the parties, including yours, especially yours probably because you've been in power for 10 years at the federal level, he's overtaxed as a senior. He says he did go back to work. He was taxed 55%. What can your party promise doing forward to help his situation, to help seniors?
I really believe, I really appreciate the question, but it's true. When retired individuals go back to work, they're taxed at a higher bracket, and I think we need to really look at that and look at tax reform in terms of making it affordable, but also we need to pay for things, but I think we need to look at that tax reform, especially on lower income and on the aged.
Do you think your party could have done more for seniors? I know that there wasn't a seniors minister. In the Liberals had 10 years. They changed ministries around, but some people are saying they felt that the Liberals missed the boat.
Well, there were in that 10 years there were 2 increases to OAS. CPP, of course, is based on your income. But the other thing that we have done, especially around pharmaceuticals, and making sure that we get the pharmacare package in for seniors, as well as the free diabetes medication. But the other thing that we're looking at is investing as well into seniors' housing, to upgrade that housing. So those aren't actually money going into your pocket, but it is a big contribution to the seniors' way of living.
We also heard from a young person, actually, just to look at the other demographic here, who lives in Elmwood-Transcona, lives actually on the edge of Transcona by the perimeter, and he shared that he's worried about even ever having a house in the future. What concerns are you hearing from people at the door when you've been going out?
Well, the biggest concern right now that I'm hearing is we're not voting for Poilievre. So people are really seeing a clear decision between the Conservatives and the Liberals. But let's talk about housing. Mr. Carney has announced that we're going to be building 500,000 homes. I like the idea of the modular homes. There's even companies here in Winnipeg who would be able to fit right into that program and get things going.
Could that be a solution here?
It could be a solution here, yeah, because the other thing, I'm worried about urban sprawl and the number of streets that we have that we're building, because that's already a concern. But we can be building modular homes, which are going to be far cheaper. Now, they're not going to be the $800,000 homes that Mr. Poilievre is talking about, but they're going to be about $250,000 homes.
Finally, last word is yours. What is one thing that you want Elmwood-Transcona voters to know about you or think about before they head to the ballot box on the 28th?
Okay, thanks. In the next few weeks, you're going to receive a lot of information at your door. You're going to be pestered, I would say, by people knocking on your door and talking to you. The most important question, I think, for individuals to think about is who best represents the Canadians and Canada in the Prime Minister's seat. I believe that that's Mark Carney. I believe he has the experience to do it, and I believe we have a very progressive plan, unlike the other parties. Third point. Sorry, I'm really pushing it.
That's okay. I always watch time. I make them equal.
The third
you
point.
Have 30 seconds.
The third point is that we can see nationally the NDP vote is going down. This vote is between the Conservatives and the Liberals.
We'll leave it there. Ian McIntyre, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I do actually, listeners, set stop clocks on all these. I want to be fair to all of the parties that join us. So Ian McIntyre has joined us live here, the Liberal candidate for Elmwood-Transcona. Earlier, Leila Dance, the NDP candidate, was also here. And Colin Watson was here early in the morning in the first hour. He is the PPC candidate for this area. Conservative candidate Colin Reynolds did not respond to multiple invitations to join us this morning. Time right now is 8:26.
Narrative, lyric, heroic, romantic. verse, or prose. The 2025 CBC Poetry Prize is on. Send in your best unpublished poem or poetry collection. Up for grabs, cash prizes from the Canada Council for the Arts, a 2-week writing residency at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, and your work published on CBC Books. Contest closes June 1st. For rules and more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
It is just about time to be wrapping our show, but I do want to mention a couple of things here. First of all, Marjorie may or may not be with us from the studio, so just need a little bit of an on-air cue here. Hi, Marge.
Hi, Marcy.
Excellent. Just on time. And actually, you're right on focus, too, because Marjorie always comes in at this time of day, and she shares with us what's coming up in the call-in portion of Radio Noon between 12:30 and 1. And you actually have a political call-in today.
We do. We're actually taking a closer look at poll numbers. So the question we're asking is, are you following the polls closely? Why or why not? Our guest is Eric Grenier of The Writ, and The Writ, of course, managing CBC's poll tracker. You can see that on our website. We're also going to be taking a closer look at some of the ridings here in Manitoba. There are some tight races. For example, Marcy, like the one that you're broadcasting live from today. So join us after 12:30 with your questions, and we'll also take a closer look at those polls this afternoon.
Okay, thanks very much, Marge.
You're welcome.
That is Marjorie Dalhouse, host of Radio Noon, with their call-in today all about politics and the polls. So if you want to weigh in and you can't make the noon hour call-in, 788-3797 is where you can leave a message today. Well, it's starting to get really hopping at the Salisbury House here on Regent Avenue West at 1570 Regent Avenue West. So lots of people coming and talking to us about their thoughts and opinions, and we certainly appreciate it. I also want to mention where we're going to be coming up next. So this has been Elmwood-Transcona. Next week, and each and every week leading up to the election, we're moving around town. So next week, we're going to be in the riding of Winnipeg West. Also interesting, this is one that used to have 10 names. Remember, Headingley, Assiniboia, Charleswood, it extended out. This is now called Winnipeg West. We're going to be located for our morning show live next Thursday at the Tim Hortons at 3890 Grant. So that's where we're going to be headed next week. The Tim Hortons up at 3890 Grant Avenue. And, of course, as we did this morning, we will extend invitation to all of those who are confirmed to be running in that riding. Coming up to news here, we've got a couple of traffic issues. Alex called the commuter line northbound Main right now. There's a stalled car in the left lane at Assiniboine, and it's keeping cars from turning left. And then Grant and Stafford, there's been a collision, just to repeat this here. A southbound curb lane on Grant is blocked, in fact. The east and middle lanes on Stafford are blocked. So traffic signal pole there has been hit. It's on the roadway, and emergency crews, we understand, are on scene. So I want to mention that this morning. If you're having any late trouble in traffic, you can still reach Corey, 788-3093. I do want to take a moment before the news to thank our team here. So let's thank Corey Funk and Marshall Hodgins and Kevin Nipatebo, who have been back in studio. I also want to thank producers Nelly Gonzalez and Corey Funk, as well as producer Donna Carrero, who's been producing all of our election coverage live shows. Big thanks to Chloe Friesen, who's been on location with us this morning, our technician as well, and to our news department. Speaking of which, it's time for Heather Wells and your CBC News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. At 8:30, it is still 1 degree in Winnipeg. We're headed to a high today of 3, slightly cooler than seasonal, and a slight chance of flurries this morning or rain this afternoon. Manitoba pork producers are breathing a cautious sigh of relief after the announcement of U.S. tariffs, which did not include Canada yesterday. Currently, there are no tariffs on either pork products or live animals heading into the U.S. Cam Dahl at the Manitoba Pork Council says even though it's good news for now, they still face trade challenges.
Yes, we are still facing 25% tariffs on product going into China. And that is problematic because we don't have other easy markets for the products that we ship into China. But going into the U.S. this morning is still remains tariff-free.
Dahl says pork is one of Manitoba's biggest exports to the U.S. and China. He hopes the federal government does not put counter tariffs on U.S. pork coming into Canada. The head of the group representing Manitoba's bioscience industry calls it a short-term sigh of relief. While Canada is relatively unscathed, Andrea Ladesseur says the impact on the economies that are hit will inevitably be felt in Canada.
Our supply chain is so interconnected that
You know, the number one export out of Manitoba is medicine, and those markets are around the world. We have a product the world wants. Same with our innovations in agriculture. When we look at emerging agriculture systems like India, we know we have the technology, the knowledge, the commercialized technology that they're going to need to really advance how they farm.
Ladouceur says there will also be humanitarian impacts because many of the targets for Trump's tariffs are undeveloped countries. Manitoba's premier is backing away from an environmental goal he set shortly after taking office. Wab Kinew wanted Manitoba Hydro to go fully green by 2035. That meant weaning the Crown utility off its last fossil fuel-burning electricity plant. Well, that was back in 2023. Kinew says the trade squabble with the U.S. is now altering his view.
We have to look at the American situation and things that we might have thought of in the past a certain way, the balance between renewables and carbon-based fuel. I think given what we're seeing with Trump, we have to be able to put the future power needs of our province as the first priority and make sure that we have everything that we need by way of electricity to build Manitoba up for the future.
The Crown Corporation proposed a new fuel-burning station in February. Kinew says its two 250-megawatt turbines would likely have to use natural gas. To the federal election, Liberal leader Mark Carney will spend most of his day on Parliament Hill as Prime Minister dealing with tariff response. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is also in Ottawa. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is in Oshawa. Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet starts today in Quebec City. And Green Party co-leader Jonathan Penneau is in Montreal. Also tonight, all the party leaders will be interviewed in French on Radio-Canada. Brandon University is seeing international student applications plunge. President David Docherty says it has been slammed by federal policies. International student permit numbers for the entire country have been slashed by Ottawa. The cutbacks are being felt at Brandon University with 1,600 fewer applications in 2024 than in the previous year.
We know that that the word is out in the international community for students who are thinking to say that Canada is no longer as welcoming as it once was, and that's why we're seeing the dramatic decrease in the number of applications.
Docherty wants to see Manitoba universities be given a most favored institution status. That would mean they would be eligible to allow more international students. You can find more news. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
Hello.
Sorry, Heather. Thank you very much. Let's go to Corey Funk now. Last quick look at weather and traffic.
Yes, in terms of weather today, we are right now sitting at 1 at the Forks in Winnipeg, heading for a high of 3, and actually a chance of flurries or showers here in this city today, about 30% chance or so. That's a similar case actually right across the province today. You might see some flurries, particularly Brandon, Dauphin, as well as Thompson as well today. As for the commute, got a call from Alex. There's a stalled car in the left lane on northbound Main, right at Assiniboine, and it kind of is keeping people from turning kind of left onto Assiniboine, so you have to go around, so heads up there. As well, for the last hour or so, there's been a collision at Grant and Stafford, so the southbound curb lane on Grant is blocked entirely, and the eastbound curb and middle lanes on Stafford also blocked right now. Traffic signal has been knocked down. Emergency vehicles are on scene.
All right, thanks very much, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Jim Kilbourne, who was up early and let us in this morning. Huge thanks to Salisbury House for letting us this be our studio. Thanks to the regulars who put up with me talking and doing a radio show in between their breakfast here. There's lots of folks here at the Sal's at 1570 Regent Avenue West. It's been our community location today. And a big thanks to the candidates as well. This is democracy in action. Thanks to the voters who came out also to pose questions and to listen and lean in. Last vote to one of those people. Chris Templin writes, Marcy, welcome to my riding. For the record, she wrote on Facebook here, I've my sign up for the front yard for the incumbent. As much as I like and support the Liberal candidate, who's a former teaching colleague, the race here is between the NDP and Cons. This is Chris's opinion. I believe most voters in this riding understand the long-standing binary nature of the district and will vote strategically if they're not in alignment with Poilievre's political style and objectives. So Chris Templin just writing in, as all voters do, with their own personal points of view and also with how they're planning on voting. So the choice is going to be yours on April 28th. Good luck to all of the candidates. And thank you to everyone for joining and listening across Manitoba this morning to our show today from Elmwood-Transcona. We're back in studio tomorrow at 541 Portage with another edition of Information Radio. Also next week, then, we're going to the Winnipeg West riding, as I've been mentioning. So we will see you out there, out in that Charleswood, Assiniboia, Headingley area. So looking forward to that as well. Take care, be well, Manitoba. This has been CBC Live on Location. I'm Marcy Marcusa. The Current's coming up next.